Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. This is your DC Spotlight for the comics that are coming out the week of November 9th, 2021. And it's very nice to have my partner in crime, Rocky from Comic Boom, joining me. Rocky, I know you had a rough week, man. How are you?
Well, I'm doing better. You know, my dad died last week, so it was it was a really great family gathering, and it was just surrounded by family and friends. And I just want to say thank you for that. I know there were some people on Twitter and social media and on YouTube that reached out and gave their condolences to me, yourself included, Jace. Thank you for that, and Dark Knight and the rest of the YouTube community. It's a great comic book community, and we're all supportive of each other. And yeah, it's one of those things. But you know, it was kind of, you know, I'm just trying to get back in the groove, and I don't think I'm going to necessarily bring my A game tonight, but you know, it'd be nice to talk about some other heroes other than my dad for a change, and I say that with great respect to my dad.
Yeah, and again, my condolences. It's part of life, but it's never easy. So yeah, it's tough. But I will say, you know, I doing this show for as long as I've been doing it now, 10 years, and I don't think I've ever had a co-host that lasted as long as you had. Like, you know, co-hosts have gone in and out. Longtime listeners of the podcast will know that. It has everything to do with the amount of episodes I put in and how much time and dedication. And it's kind of rare to find somebody else that wants to, you know, put in that much time, which is fine. But all that being said, you're actually the longest co-host I've ever had. You know, granted, we just do the Tuesday DCs, but it's been over a year now.
Yeah.
And, you know, having done it by myself, I'm used to it, having done it for so long. But man, I really missed you last week. When I had nobody to bounce ideas off of, and I'm thinking, as I'm talking about these books, like, am I really right in thinking this wasn't that good? You know, I really wish Rocky was here, because maybe I'm missing something. So
Yeah. No,
I
I
see
hear you.
how that.
I appreciated you too on the one day that you were. We did the one podcast where you were driving, and
I was in the
I had to
stuck in
wing
the
it.
car. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so much. Yeah, it's so much tougher when you're on your own. So anyway, glad you're back, and I feel like this week it was sort of an average week, maybe just slightly above average. That nothing really blew me away, which I suppose in a way is a little disappointing, because we had a couple of things here that I was really looking forward to. Justice League: The Last Ride finale, chief among them, and while it was good, it didn't blow me away. So I don't know. It's an above average week, but in a way I was a little disappointed with the week, because I guess I just had some expectations, which normally I try not to do. How'd you
Yeah.
feel about the week overall?
Well, yeah. Honestly, I don't know to what extent. Like I had a pretty, like I said, I had a rough week with my dad passing. So, but honestly, these comics, I really enjoyed Justice League Last Ride, and I really liked Action Comics. But the rest, I was kind of disappointed in. To what extent I might have been influenced by the personal events in my life, I
Yeah,
don't know. So it's hard to say. But I have to say, I was a little disappointed. But
yeah, fair enough. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. First book we're going to talk about: Batman the Imposter #2, written by Matson, Tomlin. Andrea Sorrentino handles the artwork. Jordi Belair does colors. Once again, there's no credits page, so I can't credit the letter, unfortunately. But the art is solid. I mean, again, Andrea Sorrentino, we talked about it the first time we talked about this book. Anybody who saw his Gideon Falls work knows that he's really leveled up, and it's the same thing here. I mean, the art is spectacular. There's one particular page where you're sort of, I imagine you're supposed to be sort of looking up at this dome of Wayne Manor, which is fantastic, very much almost like a J.H. Williams inspired. You know, he always does those panel layouts that are circular, with insets in them, and I just thought that was fantastic. If not a little, maybe hard hard to read. Like, there's a couple word balloons I read out of order, but again, it didn't pull me out of the story, and I thought it was fantastic. I did mention how much I liked the first issue when we talked about it, and then I talked a little bit about how the only thing I didn't like was the fact that Andrea Sorrentino was drawing Bruce Wayne to look like, um, Pattinson. What's his first? Is it?
Robert
I know it's
Pattinson. Yeah.
Robert. There you go, Robert. I was thinking Edward, but I think that's his character in the sparkly vampire thing or
Sparkly
whatever. Yeah,
Twilight. Yeah.
but anyway, I was like, because I'm not sure how I feel. I don't particularly care for that casting. I hope that I'm wrong and he does a great job, but everything I've heard seems contrary to that. But regardless, I was like, I just don't know this that they're trying to tie this in with that. And then what I didn't realize was this guy Matson Tomlin. He's the one that actually the wrote the movie, wrote the
This.
Batman movie that's coming up. So
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense. So I couldn't help but have that in the back of my mind when I read this. And so there's times where I wonder, okay, so how much of this mythology that we get in this Batman the Imposter are we going to see in the movie? I don't remember in any of the trailers I've seen. Not that I've watched them hundreds of times like some people have. I think I've seen them each. I think I've seen the latest trailer only once, and the first trailer I think I watched maybe 2 or 3 times. But I don't remember seeing Alfred in any of the trailers, and I can't think off the top of my head of anybody who's playing him or has been cast as him in the movie. And the reason I
Yeah.
bring that up is because there's a scene here where Alfred is talking to Dr. Leslie Tompkins early on when Bruce is still very much a young man. He's at boarding school, and it's just wildly out of character for Alfred, where he's talking about being overwhelmed. What does he do when an 11-year-old is making explosives? The whole manor staff is terrified of him. He's so angry. I didn't ask for this. I'm not a parent. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a social worker. I'm a damn butler. And then we find out that Bruce was sent away to boarding school. So it's almost like Alfred was like, I can't deal with this kid and just shove him off, which, you hear parents doing that. Like they've got a kid that's just out of control. They can't get a handle on him and they sort of just look for the easy way out and ship him off and make him somebody else's problem. Now, I'm not saying that's always the wrong choice. Maybe a kid does need to go to military school. Maybe it's they need structure or whatever. I mean, obviously we know Bruce Wayne's been through a lot of trauma watching his parents gunned down right before his eyes. It just seemed like this is not the Alfred that we know. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's miscasting or mischaracterization to the level of the way Kevin Costner acted as Pa Kent in Man of Steel, but it's heading down that path. It's just not an Alfred that you ever would say. I mean, Alfred loved Bruce like his own son, from the time he was born. So I just don't. I don't know. It just felt out of character to me. But that being said, I still didn't think that it was. It didn't certainly didn't ruin this book for me. It's a minor scene, and there's a lot to like here. What I do like about Matson's characterization is his characterization of Bruce Wayne. He's actually he says it himself in his own word that he's falling in love with this detective, Alyssa Wong, who initially he was just using to gain access to Gotham City police files so he could try to track down a pattern. He knows there must be a pattern to the killings that this imposter is doing, but he doesn't have enough information. Which, you think Batman doesn't have enough information. What? Well, keep in mind, it's only, he hasn't even been doing it, but not less than 2 years. I'm not exactly sure if I think it's mentioned in the first issue that it's past the first year, but not past the second. So he's in his second year. He's still building his infrastructure and whatnot. And part of what he does here in this issue is hack into the Wesker security cameras that are all over the city. And maybe that's how he sort of starts building his ability to gather information around Gotham City. I sort of like that idea. Um, so all that to say this is a little bit younger, a little more inexperienced Bruce Wayne. He's not all there as Batman yet. I don't know. Maybe that'll help me enjoy the movie more and help me enjoy Pattinson's portrayal of Batman more, Bruce Wayne more, if I think of him as sort of young and inexperienced. But that's also sort of the same cop out that Goyer and Zack Snyder used in the Superman movie, Man of Steel, and that didn't work for me. Superman, oh, he's just starting out, has to learn not to kill. What are you talking about? Guy was raised in Middle America. He has family values. We all know not to kill. I'm sitting here doing it right now. I'm sitting here right now, not killing. Nobody had to teach me how to do it. So I go back and forth on that. But I will say that it's a good story. The art is fantastic. That characterization of Bruce Wayne as a little more vulnerable. Yes, he was trying to use Alyssa Wong to further his mission. He says at one point when he finally does sort of take advantage of her, she's asleep in his bed, and he's there using her access to get those police files. And he says, "I'm not proud of this, but the mission is all that matters. It's all that ever matters." But yet he's falling for her. He has feelings for Alyssa Wong. Maybe not only because of just who she is, and she's somebody who's interacting with him, and he's so lonely, but the fact that her parents were murdered in front of her as well. So they do have that sort of in common. So there's a lot to like here. Um, and I will say, both I've felt this in reading both issues, where just when you think the issue is going to be done, you get another 4 or 5 pages. It's a big chunk of story. And I don't know if Matson Tomlin has ever written any comics before. Uh, and it doesn't always translate going from writing screenplay to writing comics, but this is a pretty well paced, well put together comic in terms of the technical aspects of it. So, despite the fact that it might have a lot of tie-ins to a movie that I have my reservations about, I'm really enjoying the story. So, you have anything to add about this, Rocky?
Well, as I said to you before, this was the one comic this week I didn't have time to read. But as I'm paging through it, as you're giving a very thoughtful review, I did notice the one page that really stood out for me was it's 12 panels, or pardon me, 16 panel grid on the page, and it has Bruce holding Miss Wong's hand, and they're looking at eagles. They look like or pigeons or eagles or something, and as the panels progress, they change into bats, and then he's about to tell her. He says, "I am." You think, is he going to tell her that he's Batman? And then, of course, the next page, full page of surrounded by bats, not by birds. It's like he's struggling between the Bruce Wayne and Batman persona. So artistically, it really, really resonated. And I thought that was very effective to show that he is falling in love. And of course, he states it bluntly on the double page spread. And yeah, it's quite impressive. And again, I mean, the fact that she also had her parents, she's looking at Bruce Wayne's wounds as they're laying in the bed, and he's making up excuses how he got this wound or that wound, scars on his body, and you could and just the bright red of showing her trauma as well. So it makes you wonder, though, if this is a new character, is she going to end up getting killed? Because Batman's love interests always seem to have a very short shelf life.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it is a little bit, in terms of the theatrical, it is a little sort of tropey. I mean,
Yeah.
as we know, it's been a long time since Batman's had a love interest in the comics. That way lies sort of hope and positivity. And Batman comics, as we know, for the last 20 years, have to be super dark. So it doesn't get a love interest. But in the movies, whether it be um, Kim Basinger as Vicky Vale, or I guess in the third one it was Dr. Chase Meridian, Nicole Kidman, um, and then in Batman Begins it was Katie Holmes as a childhood friend. And I haven't
Mm.
heard anything about any sort of love interest in this new movie, but maybe it'll be an Alyssa Wong. I mean,
Well,
who
it's
knows? Or maybe.
it's Catwoman. It's going to be
Oh, that's right. That's
Catwoman. I'm
right.
pretty sure,
Yeah,
which is why I
yeah, you're
thought
right.
maybe I wonder if this character might be a detective in the movie. And I mean, that would have been an intelligent thing to do. Like have I think that would be very smart in terms of PR. Like, oh, by the way, that Batman the Imposter had the detective that's in the Batman movie. But they
Yeah,
don't.
you wonder if maybe Matson, that wasn't his choice necessarily, or maybe he felt he needed to. It's much harder to get traction with a brand new character like an Alyssa Wong, as opposed to when people hear, "Oh yeah, it's Batman and Catwoman." Obviously, they have history. There's chemistry there. There's romance. That's going to draw more people in than, "Oh yeah, Batman. By the way, Batman's love interest in this new movie's Alyssa Wong." Who?
Yeah.
So maybe this is something that he would have wanted to do, but couldn't do in the movie, and so he put it here. Who knows? It's all speculation. But anyway, let's move on. Next book I'm going to talk about or we're going to talk about, is Action Comics number 1036. It's finally officially started. Warworld Saga Part 1 from writer Phillip Kennedy Johnson. Daniel Sampier as the artist, Adriana Lucas on colors, Dave Sharp on letters. And there's a backup feature. It's part 2, but I feel like it's been a couple issues since we had part 1. But it wasn't very good, to be honest with you. But it stars The Guardian. It's written by Sean Lewis. Sami Basri is the artist. Hi-Fi does the colors, and Dave Sharp does the letters. But this one was interesting. We're finally getting to this Warworld saga that's long been been teased, and we've had prelude to. So, what did you think of this, Rocky?
Well, I actually quite enjoyed this. Let me see here. I'm trying to. There we go. Oh, sorry. I just want to bring it up on the screen here for
Yep, no problem.
people. Like I said, I'm not quite on my A game yet, but here I go. Okay, yeah. I like this. I actually, this is, look, the fact of the matter is that we know that between Grant Morrison's Superman and the Authority and linking that up with Phillip Kennedy Johnson's work here in Action Comics, leading into War World, we know that there was some, it definitely feels like a continuity glitch. What I found interesting here, though, is it's a very vain attempt, but we get some vain attempt at trying to explain the inconsistencies. Why was Superman under Grant Morrison's Superman and the Authority? Why did he have gray hair and then the Superman in Action Comics have dark hair? I mean, explain all these inconsistencies. And as it turns out, apparently it's been the Authority. It's been the members of the Authority, Manchester Black, along with the Enchantress, that have been sort of feeding the illusion and sort of propping up Superman's use of his powers so that people don't realize that how much power he's actually lost. And it's revealed here that Mongol is in fact aware of it. Other interesting things here is, as Superman is planning with the Authority to basically go to War World to rescue the Phaelosians, it appears that one of the lead executives or leaders of the United Planets is likely working with Mongol, because the minute that that the United Planets, apparently the upper echelons of the United Planets, they are aware that Superman is going to War World, because normally I like what Phillip Kennedy Johnson is doing here, because you're seeing, it's quite clear that Phillip Kennedy Johnson is at least acknowledging the United Planets. Now, I know that a lot of people get frustrated. Nobody wants to acknowledge maybe a Bendis plotline, but the United Planets, I mean, United Planets is a cool concept, so it's good to have them in the storyline here. Why wouldn't they be involved with something as big as that? Well, it appears that this was Phillip. The United Planets is now taken off the table because clearly Mongol is a few steps ahead of everybody, both politically as well. This new Mongol is different than his father. The Mongol who was, the Mongol who is much more intelligent in terms of being a strategic planner than the Mongol who was. And that really comes through here. Phillip Kennedy Johnson does a fantastic job of showing the gravitas of the situation, the horror of War World, and Daniel Sampere on the art. Wow. Adriana Lucas on the colors. This just pops off the page. The emotion experienced by Superman as they're staring at War World, they're staring at all these satellites that have the dead bodies that Mongol was preparing for Superman to come there with the Authority. I mean, he knows, and to have, there's this just horrific scene of bodies being tied to satellites, all to basically to get Superman's goat, to psychologically intimidate him, to ultimately, obviously, try to break him down before the physical battles even begin. And wow, it's interesting because the Authority is a team that are made up of individuals, especially with Midnighter and Apollo, that are used to killing, at least in past incarnations. These are killers. They're not I think they're probably more adept at killing than even Superman is, because, well, Superman doesn't kill. But they basically promised they're not going to kill as part of Superman's team. And there's a scene here where Mongol has lined up all these dead Phaelosians leading into the arena, and it's extremely effective. Daniel Sampere really just shines on the art. This really raises the stakes. This feels like it has gravitas. That's what I really like about this. All this, I got to give full props to Phillip Kennedy Johnson here, because he embraced the continuity established by Bendis, which none of us really like, because Bendis was all over the place with continuity. But Phillip Kennedy Johnson, he's earned my respect. He earned it a couple of issues ago, quite frankly, but this is really good. And Daniel Sampere showing a tear running down Superman's face as he's staring at the dead. Superman, he knows he has to be there. And, the stakes are raised. The Justice League isn't with him. They're off the table. He's got a new team Superman is not really familiar with. He's fighting an enemy that he really has not fought before, because he fought the Mongol who was, not the Mongol who is. And And us readers, it's just exciting. I feel like I don't know where this is going. And maybe this is there's a rumor going around the internet that is Superman going to be killed, and then his son John Kent might have to take over the mantle. Is John Kent's fear that is, from what he heard in the 31st century, his fear that his father won't come back from this? Is that going to become a reality? Will he survive? He'll defeat Mongol undoubtedly, but will he survive this? I love all these questions. I love this team that Mongol has put together. This is just a great issue, and I just don't want to spoil everything for everybody. So I'll what do you think?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to what you said. I do agree that it's great. So my initial, impression is, well, it didn't advance the story that much. Was sort of where when I first finished it, right? Like, man, it feels like we've been waiting for this War World storyline to get started forever, and really we have almost a year, 9 months. We saw it in Future State, and that I heard the same rumor about, is Superman going to die? Well, we saw Superman still trapped on Warworld with like none of his original costume left, practically wearing very little at all, chains and some leather straps, this kind of gladiatorial battle gear. And that's far in the future with Future State. Obviously, we know Future State may or may not actually come to pass. So, will he actually die? I hope not, and not because I'm a Superman fan, but just because it's kind of been there, done that, and that is the reservation I do have with this War World storyline. I've talked at length almost every time we talk about this. I mentioned the Superman Exile storyline from Roger Stern back in the late '80s, early '90s, which I think did this pretty much. It's the same storyline, and it was spectacular. So why are we repeating ourselves? But I do agree that there's a lot to like here. And I give all the props in the world to Phillip Kennedy Johnson and the creative team for giving us an in-continuity, in-story explanation for why Superman had the gray hair. And then, in some books and others, I won't pick too many holes in it, but I do just wonder, okay, so if it was the Enchantress and Manchester Black that were putting a spell on to not have Superman's gray hair show up and not have him look aged up, then how come in the book that had Manchester Black and Enchantress, which was the Superman and the Authority, why did he have the gray hair in that book? And then the books that didn't have Manchester Black and Enchantress, he didn't.
Yeah,
So it still doesn't.
no,
It
I know.
still doesn't. Yeah, it still doesn't 100% make sense. But I appreciate the effort, and I can sort of overlook that better than them not saying anything at all. At least we have an explanation. But yeah, that was my initial impression. Let me kind of say, well, nothing really happened in this issue, but I want to pull back on that a little bit, because I think what's important, and I think the reason I felt that is because the anticipation of this story has been building for so long that it's like, man, I'm ready to get into it. I'm ready to find out, okay, what's going to happen? How does this all turn out? Well, we got to get there first, right? And so let's have an issue like this where, like you said, Rocky, Phillip Kennedy Johnson just establishing the horror here, the gravitas, the fact that the Mongol who is a bigger threat than the Mongol who was, maybe a bigger threat than any previous Mongol that Superman has fought. He's leveled up in a way. And so I think it's important to have this sort of context and this sort of issue where it kind of sets the stage. And yeah, I mean, I don't think this is going to be the Future State story. It's not going to lead directly into that Future State story, because when we saw Superman far in the future battling as a gladiator, none of these other heroes, I'll use that term in air quotes, heroes, were there with him, So hopefully we don't head down that path. And the only thing I hope for this, obviously I hope it's entertaining, but I hope it doesn't drag on too long. In this, I want the story to be as long as it needs to be for Phillip Kennedy Johnson to tell the story he wants to tell. I don't want this story to artificially say it's got to last X number of issues, which may be longer than the story itself would dictate, because we want to keep John Kent as Superman back on Earth. Like, this story needs to be as long as it needs to be, and I don't want to feel like they're stretching it out and it ends up being a bunch of filler. So that's my only worry about, well, how come the pacing isn't going a little quicker? Well, we want to make sure we have 24 issues of John Kent as Superman back on Earth, because that's just what we want, so we can sell more John's Did I say John Stewart? John Kent.
John Kent.
Uh, yeah, more Jonathan Kent merchandise. More Superboy. Well, John Kent, Superman, son of Kal-El merchandise or what have you. So, but overall, yeah, I felt like this was pretty good. The backup story, like I mentioned, the Guardian in Metropolis with Jimmy Olsen, it's a throwaway.
Yeah.
Honestly, this 2-part story about kids getting trapped by some sort of internet, villain persona, this virtual villain. It's utterly forgettable. Doesn't really. The only positive I can say first of all, the art's fantastic from Sami Basri and the colors are really great, but the story is just so utterly forgettable. But the one thing I did like about it is it did sort of harken back to the Triangle era when there were so many other supporting characters like Guardian and Jimmy Olsen. And so having Jimmy and the Guardian teaming up here did remind me a little bit of that era, and that's my favorite era of Superman. So I did like that aspect of it, but on its own merits, the story it feels unnecessary. It's just another one of these. It's a backup that doesn't need to be there, so they can make an excuse to charge an extra buck. It doesn't need to be there. Take it out and charge less.
Yeah.
So
No, I agree, and I got nothing to add. I didn't enjoy it. I'm not a Guardian fan. I'm not a Jimmy Olsen fan. Even in the Triangle era, if I'm blunt, Jimmy Olsen needs to be revamped. Unfortunately, Matt Fraction Fraction had an opportunity to do that. He didn't. He doubled down on the Silver Age nonsense of Jimmy Olsen, so he's as thoroughly uninteresting as he ever was. I do think he needs to be redefined. Jimmy Olsen has not been redefined, sadly. And but Sean Lewis is. But I believe Sean Lewis has written a good story here for a Guardian and Jimmy Olsen story. So don't get me wrong. And the art, as you said, is great. I mean, it's good art. I'm just not a fan of the characters per se. And this, I don't think anybody could write a story that would make me interested in the Guardian and Jimmy Olsen. And I say that with great respect. And that's just the way it is. And I wish, I wish maybe we had somebody on here who was a Guardian or Jimmy Olsen fan. But no, this was just, I know, such a waste. When we have a War World saga here, which is fantastic. To come off that, this backup is a mistake. This is like no one's going to be interested in the Guardian or Jimmy Olsen because this is a backup to this story. Come on. I mean, give us more Superman and fighting Mongol, man. I mean, let Daniel St. Pierre go to town.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to miss having Daniel on Action Comics. I think this was his last issue. We know he's off working on something secret that he couldn't tell us exactly what it was. Couldn't even tell us if it was a miniseries when we had him on the show, but looking forward to finding out what it is in the new year. So, all right, up next is I Am Batman #3 from writer John Ridley. Steven Segovia and Christian Duce are the artists. Ray Locus on colors. ALW's Troy Petrie on letters. Okay, first of all, let me just say the problems that I have with the I Am Batman, if you've listened to any previous episodes, you know what they are. It feels a little bit like John Ridley's trying to establish the Fox family as this soap operatic dynasty of characters a la Fox's Empire and whatnot. And I don't really care for that. I don't care for having it shoved down my throat. I don't know who asked for it. But I will say, setting that aside, I'm enjoying where this is going. I like John Ridley's sense of storytelling, his sense of characterization, the voice that he's giving to Jace Fox. And I think if this wasn't tied into Batman, even the parts I don't like about it, like the fact that I'm being told I'm supposed to care about the Fox family, I think I might actually be pulled into their drama. I mean, it certainly makes sense. John Ridley, with his, screenwriter for Academy Award winning screenwriter for 12 Years a Slave and whatnot. This is where he lives, right? This is what he knows, writing stories about relationships and family when it comes to African American families and the dynamics of that and expectations and how that plays out in the real world and whatnot. He knows that write what you know. He knows that certainly much more than I do as a white guy. I think where it falls down for me a little bit is the fact that it is a little bit derivative, and I don't want to be one of those people that says, well, if you want to have a black Batman, that shouldn't be allowed. Just make a new character. If you think there needs to be more black characters, make new black characters, because I don't think people wouldn't be paying attention as much if it wasn't for the fact that Jace Fox is calling himself Batman. So I get it. But I also feel like if this wasn't connected to the Batman mythos in any way, that I would find the other aspects of it, the non-Batman aspects of it, more interesting, because I would feel like, okay, I'm have the opportunity to discover something new. I mean, that's still the case, but the problem I have with it is like I've said before, it's like this version of Lucius Fox, this characterization of Lucius Fox that we're getting from John Ridley is a little bit out of character. It's a little bit incongruous with the Lucius Fox that we've ever had before, which is necessary for John Ridley to tell the story he's going to tell. But I have a hard time reconciling it in my mind that Lucius Fox wouldn't give the money back to Bruce Wayne. Wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like there's some problems. There's some problems there, because it's not the Lucius Fox that I know. As opposed to if these were all new characters, not tied into Batman or whatever, I think I would find it more interesting. Maybe that's not fair for me, but that's just how I feel. But I am starting to be able to put more of that aside and just focus on the story that we're getting here. Thought the art was fantastic. I love the scene where Jace as Batman has to go and protect his mother, who we know has it in for this new Batman, because she's against the masks, and she buys into what the magistrate is selling, basically no masks, no vigilantism in Gotham and whatnot. So yeah, I did enjoy it pretty well. I thought it was really fast paced because there was a ton of action. I don't know that the mystery of what's going on with the seer and what's going on with these other characters is that well done. I don't know. Maybe John Ridley hasn't written that much mystery. That stuff hasn't hooked me yet. But just in terms of action and the interpersonal drama, the emotion that we know Jace Fox has to be feeling, the emotion of the other members of his family, I think that is all resonating, particularly with Jace's feelings. We get that interaction early on with his father, where we know that Jace has gone to work for his dad in order to take advantage of the resources there. It helps him be Batman. He says himself he's appropriating equipment to become his version of Batman. And that's his mission. That's his goal. That's his priority. And so when he misses deadlines or misses project meetings or whatnot, and his dad's screaming at him, and he's just sitting there taking it, and you feel bad for him, Yeah. So that stuff's working for me. And I'm trying to put aside the other part where this version of Lucius Fox isn't really the most, it's not the one that's in my head, basically. So anyway, what did you think, Rocky? Is this working for you at all?
Well, I got some criticism of it. It's funny when you mention Lucius Fox criticizing his son Jace for not showing up and not being responsible as sort of like the head of the company. I wonder how much did Lucius Fox ever give Bruce Wayne shit for not showing up for work? I mean, Bruce Wayne basically let Lucius Fox run it, and I find it ironic that Lucius Fox, a father is always harder on the son, right? You're my son. You're supposed to do this.
Technically, Bruce Wayne was Lucius's boss, so maybe he felt like.
But I'm just saying he let Lucius run everything, and I just find it kind of funny that I get it, but it's I just find it obviously Jace Fox, if he had any idea, he's going to realize it. If you're going to run a company, it's much better to own it as opposed to have your father telling you how to run it. So Bruce Wayne had it easy. So Jace Fox is starting to realize that he didn't. Bruce Wayne doesn't realize how good he has it. He can literally do whatever he wants when you're the boss. But per Jace Fox, he actually has to do two jobs. But in any way, I didn't mind this. I do think that if you're looking at this story in conjunction with the larger Batman Fear State and Future State, Future State, and all the different villains that are all over the Bat universe right now, it can be a little bit much. I feel that because we review all the DC comics in the Batman universe, I feel like there's a redundancy here. We got Oracle, Anti-Oracle, now we got Seer, then we got Scarecrow, and we got Fear Gas, and then we get different types of fear gas, and there's all kinds. Everything is just all over the place. And here we have the seer who's manipulated the masses to work for him, and there's this kid who's been corrupted by conspiracy theories, who's been part of this moral authority, who killed the character Anarchy. So the villain or the Batman's old villain Anarchy was killed by this kid named Morris Caulfield. And what John Ridley tries to do here, and you alluded to it, is that Jace Fox's mother, Tanya Fox, is a lawyer, and she's like a pro bono lawyer. She's gonna take it upon herself to go represent this kid Morris Caulfield. So it felt a little bit forced, trying to prop her up as this strong, great, do-gooder, trying to protect even protect, murderers. And of course, she gets in a dispute with the cops that are trying to protect her. And then the precinct gets attacked while they're there and they're trying to break in. And Jace Fox finds out his mother's in there. And so he's got to run to the scene. And like you said, there's a lot of moving parts here, but it was action packed. John Ridley has improved over the last 6-7 months. This has a better flow than in past issues, I find. It's more kinetic, there's more energy, it moves forward fast. And again, I think where a lot of, unfortunately, because we already have a Batman that's dealing with this, even in this story where this character King, is calling out Batman, well, when Batman shows up, well, actually, that's not really Batman, is it? I mean, it really isn't. I mean, no one seems to be talking about the fact that there's two Batman in Gotham City. People seem to be ignoring that. It's just, I guess Batman is black if you're reading I Am Batman, and Batman is white if you're reading the other one, or in this case, he's wearing a mask. And so it's, like I said, it's a little bit odd. I'd almost like them to have two universes, like they started off with Miles Morales and Peter Parker, putting them in their own universe, but then Marvel even screwed that up by merging them, in my view, but that's a different topic. But I don't mind this story.
Yeah, you're right. And we talked about that before, about how when we got the Future State Batman with Jace Fox, how it seemed like the way it was written, those were his, first excursions as Batman, way in the future.
Yeah.
And yet now this is back in present day. Yeah, you can't. Yeah. It doesn't work.
Yeah, the continuity is wonky. It's just a wonky continuity. But again, in fairness, if you're just reading I Am Batman, and you just love Jace Fox as a character, it's actually better if you don't read the larger Batman universe, because you might actually enjoy this story that much more, because there is some degree of confusion if we're like you and I trying to make it all work in our heads, and we create this immaculate, sophisticated head canon, and you and I are, I'm taking notes here trying to make sense of all this. Sometimes I just got to say, you know what? Maybe it just doesn't make sense, and I got to sit back, relax, sip my crown, and just enjoy the story for what it is, and stop trying to fit it into the larger DCU, because it just gives me a headache.
Yeah, stop trying to make it make sense, 100%.
Yeah.
All right, up next we have Black Manta, Assassin of the Sea, Part 3. Chuck Brown is the writer. Matthew Dow Smith is the artist. Marisa Louise on colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. What'd you think of this, Rocky? This third issue out of 6, halfway through here.
I'm sorry, I just gotta bring it up here. Okay. Yeah, well, I'm actually getting a little bit frustrated with this series. I was a little bit I found that artistically I really thought this suffered. I don't mind the cover, No Mercy for You, Black Manta. I don't even know who the character is up front. The scene doesn't even take place, I think, in the comic itself, but this is the prelude to Aquaman, which is interesting. I didn't know. I haven't read Future Solicits by choice, because I find that they ruin the stories for me. Apparently, we have a series coming up called Aquaman. Okay, it's this series, this issue 3 of 6 is a prelude to Aquaman. Okay, I found the art here by Delandro. I really didn't like it. I'm not a big fan.
Well, this actually wasn't Delandro this time. Well, actually, you know what? It says Delandro on the cover rather.
Okay.
But inside it says Matthew Dow Smith. But I think you're right. I think that's a mistake. I think this is Delandro, because I was thinking as I was reading the credits that this doesn't look anything like Matthew Dow Smith's art. So I think you're right. It is Valentine Delandro.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, it does. It definitely, either that or Matthew Dow Smith is very successfully copying the art.
Yeah,
and my advice to Matthew Dow Smith is don't copy Delandro's art if that's the case, because it doesn't work. And it really doesn't work here. The art actually took me out of the story. I actually found this to be a little bit confusing artistically. There's the main villain here. There's Black Manta, who we know is a villain, and then there's this other villain who hates Black Manta. It's unclear as to why, but it's. I like what they're trying to do here. I think that they're trying to establish some new importance for Black Manta by establishing that he has a history with Atlantis in the Atlantean past. And in this issue, flowing from last issue, him and his gallows partner are using the gentleman's ghost, who apparently has the power to help them travel into the past, to go back into the past of Atlantis' past to try to get to the secrets of this ornaculum metal, or oraculum, if I said that correctly. And so it's interesting here. So they're traveling back to Atlantis. Meanwhile, there's this other woman who arose from Doom's doorway on Paradise Island on Themyscira, and is greeted by Queen Nubia, and she's going to be traveling across the sea. Why? I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. The art on some of these pages, I hate to say it, but I'm showing some of the art now. On the art on some of these pages is, I mean, I want to be diplomatic, but it's just not very good. This is some of these pages, it's not only is the art bad in some of these, but there's no background. I mean, there's literally no backgrounds. This really seemed like it was phoned in because you had a deadline to meet and you got it. And look, and I don't want to, it served the story insofar as I got the gist of what was going on, but this was not something that I was inclined to read twice, even though wasn't entirely clear what was going on. I didn't want to read it twice, and I didn't. And I don't really know exactly what's going on here. I feel like I'm a little bit confused. I don't know what the point of having Themyscira or Paradise Island on this was. I don't know who this black woman is who entered from Doom's doorway, and now she got counsel from Queen Nubia. Well, what did they talk about? At one point, Queen Nubia says to this woman, we don't even know her name. Were we given this woman's name black woman with white hair? Do we know her name?
No, I don't think
we're not giving her name. I don't even know who she is. And then out of the blue, Queen Nubia says, your essences must have bonded in the underworld. He is this creature is her Orisha. What's an Orisha? Explain this to us. It's just like last issue, in the second issue of Black Manta, we got all these references to names of past slave colonies and black slave history. And, again, potentially interesting stuff. I'm a history guy. I love history. So he kind of whet my appetite a bit, Chuck Brown, the writer, but he never, just throwing out a bunch of words and throwing out a bunch of fancy stuff and not even giving us names. And then it's one thing if the writing assumes too much on the part of the reader, and I believe he's assumed too much, but artistically, it's not up to task. So the art, sometimes art can save a bad story or vice versa. This was a failure on both parts. And I hate to say that, but that's just the way I feel. I like some of the dialogue between Black Manta and this Gallows character. I do really like her. She's sort of like his she's like Black Manta's sober second thought. And I think she's good for him. I do think that I might be wrong, but I'm not the only one who has suggested that maybe Black Manta is going to become more of an anti-hero, perhaps more closer to the hero side. I think they're definitely trying to move Black Manta into a higher amount of significance here. Because if I'm not to be a cynical bastard, but who asked for a Black Manta series, really? I mean, I think they want to prop him up. And quite frankly, with Jackson Hyde getting a lot of attention on Aquaman the Macabre Becoming, I think it's only appropriate that Black Manta maybe become more interesting as well. So I think that there's a good story here waiting to be told. It's just not being told, if that makes any sense. But I'll leave it at that. I am in for the long haul here, because I actually do think that this is going to have some significance moving forward, but I just don't know what it is. And I really wish writer Chuck Brown would sort of he's gotta focus on his clarity a little bit more, because there's just too many questions that I have, and and I'm asking the type of questions that should be provided in this story. I still have a lot of questions about who this villain is. Why am I supposed to care? And I, pacing is off, structure's off, and I'll just stop talking now and let you agree with me or disagree with me.
No, I agree with you. I think it's really a question of pacing, and probably a question of how much real estate is there. I agree with you. It seems like they're trying to take Black Manta in an anti-hero direction, which I really don't agree with at all. I think Black Manta is one of the best, just out and out bad guys. Like, you never question his motivation. He's a selfish guy. He cares about himself, and that's it. Um, and trying to give him anything redeeming at all, I think, is a mistake. But I don't make those decisions. So I agree with you. It does feel like they're trying to make him more relevant in terms of tying his ancestors and himself to Atlantis in some way. Which, again, like who's asking for that? Like he doesn't need to have more backstory. He doesn't need to have. I mean, you're giving him something in common with Aquaman now, so that they can maybe have common ground. They don't need common ground. He's the anti Aquaman. He's Aquaman's number one foe. It could be argued. I mean, maybe Ocean Master be the other argument you could make, but no, Black Manta is just a bad guy. So I don't know that this is necessary. And then, okay, if you're going to tie his past into Atlantis, that brings in magic. Maybe the fact that it's magic is there. Atlantis is an ancient civilization. So are the Amazons. So now you bring in Themyscira. It feels messy. It feels convoluted. It feels unnecessary. Doesn't mean it wouldn't make for a good story. It very well might. But is 6 issues enough for Chuck Brown to tell the story he wants to tell? I would say maybe it would be if the art was helping out at all. But instead of helping, I mean, the art can help. The art can neither help nor hurt, or the art can hurt. My argument would be this artwork hurts.
Well,
It's not only is it not making the story more clear, it's making the story less clear because it's so muddy and it's hard to tell what's going on at times.
well, not
So
only that.
yeah,
What's the name? Who's the name of the villain? Like, do you know the name of the villain here? I don't
well,
know
the
if
thing is, when the villain appears in that last panel, it almost looks like a version of Black Manta, which
I
was
know.
also confusing. But previously, we were told that um, the Devil Ray, as he's called,
Okay,
uh,
right.
had been, um, they wondered, is Devil Ray and Black Manta the same person? Are they not? There's questions about that as well. Why is Devil Ray, attacking? What does he want? So, yeah, a lot of different threads here. Maybe it'll all come together in the end. But even if it does, this story, if it turns out where I would recommend it to somebody, I'm going to be recommending it purely on the basis of the narrative and not on the basis of the art, because you're right, the art just doesn't help at all. And the colors are very drab as well, which also doesn't help. But I don't fault the colors for that. I don't think you could color this type of art in any other way. If you colored this art with bright colors, it would look even worse. It really would.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's. I mean, we talked about the Valentine Delandro art when we first saw it on Future State, the Mister Miracle story, that it wasn't working, and I don't know. Apparently, he can meet a deadline. I gotta think that's why he's getting this work from DC. But man, if you want Black Manta to people to pick it up and enjoy it and talk about it, you got to put a more well-known artist on there that
Yeah.
has the chops. So
It's
yeah,
not
nothing
doing
against.
it's not doing the character justice.
Yeah, exactly, and nothing against Valentine Delandro. I think for crime noir or horror, this type of thick line and impressionistic art could work, but it doesn't
Mhm.
work for superhero comics. So
Yeah.
all right, up next is Future State Gotham #7, written by Joshua Williamson and Dennis Culver. Art is by Giannis Milo Giannis, lettered by Troy Petrie. There's no colors, as we've said many times. And there's also a backup, and I'm going to sound like a little bit of a broken record here. uh, so this is a backup. It's called A Night in the Life of a Bat in Gotham. It's written by Joshua Williamson. Art is by Riley Rossmo. Letters by Darren Bennett. This backup is from Batman Black and White, like a lot of the backups have been in this future state Gotham, because it's a black and white story. I guess why not put in black and white? So I still don't understand why it's black and white. Why DC's putting out a black and white comic when they're still charging the same amount. But just like previously, Rocky and I have talked about this previously with the Jorge Jimenez backup that was from Batman Black and White. But this is even more egregious. This book is coming out the second week of November. This backup came out at the end of August, like 2 months ago, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, this Batman Black and White story just came out in Batman Black and White #4, and you're reprinting it already and charging people extra? Not okay, DC. Not okay. That being said, like we've said previously, the Milo Giannis art does look better in black and white. Maybe that's why they're doing it. I don't necessarily have a problem with them doing it that way. If they think it looks better, not colored, I agree. But you got to charge less if not coloring it, in my mind. As far as the story goes, despite it starting off a little shaky and tying into Future State Gotham, which I don't really care for, this ended up being a decent enough story. I like what it said about Red Hood and his path toward redemption. Again, the continuity gets kind of wonky. We've seen Red Hood in the current continuity give up his guns, and yet here that's not mentioned or talked about. So, again, you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt. But I liked the characterization that Culver and Williamson gave to Jason Todd. I liked his interactions with the rest of the Bat family. It was somewhat of a redemption. They're sort of meeting on common ground. So yeah, I thought it was okay. Would I recommend this? No, I still wouldn't recommend it. A lot of it has to do with the art and the value, actually, more so even than the art, because I think that Milo Giannis has improved his storytelling, has improved his line work. You can see growth over these 7 issues, and growth from the backups that he did in some of the Future State Batman stuff. So he's gotten better, which is what you want to see from an artist. To the point where I'd say I almost enjoy the art, even though it is just in black and white. So no reason he can't be a very serviceable, if not good, comic book artist. So, I hope that's the case for him. But yeah, I being that it's Future State, it's still not a sort of a universe or a timeline or time period or era that needs to exist in DC Comics, in my opinion. And now apparently we're going to get the Future State version of Hush. But again, who's asking for this? What Future State didn't work, DC. I don't know. Maybe you didn't get the message. It really didn't work. Can you just let it die by stopping this series? Stop giving us stories that are in a time period that nobody really enjoyed and frankly didn't work very well. So I don't know. Did you feel differently, Rocky?
No, I didn't. Well, I agree with you that Milo Giannis. How do I say his name again? Milo.
Yeah, Milo Giannis, I think is how
Milo Giannis. His art absolutely has improved, and that's to his credit. And you know what? I have to, in fairness, say that sort of like a manga look or feel is not my cup of tea. But honestly, I don't mind being wrong if it's for the betterment of the comic book industry. If I end up being in the minority because I like my comic books colored, so be it. I want comic books to thrive, so that's fine. I can be an outlier. So this art's improved and it's better. I'd be really curious to know where comparatively speaking, where the other readers, how other readers rate this. What are the sales for Gotham Future State? This is not my cup of tea. This storyline, it had its moments and it's some cool moments. I think story-wise, Williamson and Culver not doing a bad job, I guess. Started off terrible, I thought. I still feel that this is the process of putting lipstick on the pig, so to speak, dragging the story out this long. And for what? I mean, ultimately just yet another version of a peacekeeper in a future state that's not going to happen. Really editorially, I mean, I was really hoping, as a general sentiment, Jason, I don't know how you feel about this, but I started off, and I think both of us were optimistic about, maybe editorially the future state that, all the writers can kind of work together and this future state won't be a complete write-off, and that all these seemingly divergent storylines, it seemed almost to have some degree of planning when we read the initial Future State issues. But the way this has come together, it's actually the opposite. It's gone farther apart between the Titans and the Suicide Squad and the Batman and the Future States here. It hasn't gelled as well as I had hoped that it would. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I think that there was a larger, cohesive, larger story and narrative at play here, but it doesn't really work together as a whole very well, all these issues. Of course, most people aren't reading all the comics like we are, but because I am, I was hoping that would come together a little bit better. This is one where you absolutely can miss. You can absolutely skip this and miss absolutely nothing, because this has no consequence, no gravitas, no bearing. This is a future that's not going to happen. And at least I hope, I don't want this series to continue. I'm not actually buying the physical copy of this, and I just never will. I'm not a fan of the art, but I would be really curious to know what the sales on this are, because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm in the minority. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I would never buy this either, physical copy. And a lot of that has to do with giving me a backup that I just
Yeah,
read
that's
2 months ago.
that's
That's,
inexcusable. You're
yeah.
you're 100% right on that. That's just absolutely inexcusable. The backup, but
So anyway, let's move on. I'll let Rocky go first and talk about the next book. It's a debut, and of course, because it's DC, it's more Batman. But this time, it's not Batman and Robin, but Robin and Batman. Chapter 1, written by Jeff Lemire, who is a creator who I'm a big fan of. So I have high hopes that I will enjoy this, and did think the first issue was pretty solid. The art and colors are by Dustin Nguyen, who is a longtime collaborator of Jeff Lemire. They have an Image series. I think it was Descender and then Ascender. Letters are by Steve Wands. So basically, this is a story of Batman and Robin, but it's kind of the story of Dick Grayson becoming Robin in his own words, rather than seeing it through Batman's eyes or Bruce Wayne's perspective, which is how it's told traditionally. So, what did you think of this debut, Rocky?
I thought this was good. I thought it was good. Uh, it never felt really. I didn't find that Jeff Lemire's breaking any new ground here. Honestly, it hasn't really stood out to me. But I really can't identify anything demonstrably wrong or irritating in it. I like the art. Dustin Nugent's art. I love the art and colors. Of course, I always like his style. There's something about it. It works in the telling of this story. I really like it. I love the layouts. I love the focus on Robin. I thought the narrative was great. And this is really the story of it leads up to the adventures and the personal angst of a young Dick Grayson as he's striving to impress Batman and become partner and get his own outfit. He's got to name himself, and he's got to create his own outfit, and the struggle he went through to do that, and the struggle of trying to impress Batman, and of course Batman always being just absolutely hard on Robin, hard on Dick Grayson, because this is a young Dick Grayson and he's not officially a Robin yet. That's the point of this story. That's what kind of makes it interesting. Is this is what Dick Grayson had to go through to become that Robin, and it's really a wonderful story where you can see the frustration that Batman has with Dick Grayson, but you can also sympathize with Dick Grayson, because Dick Grayson, he is very good. He's very effective against these bad guys. He took them all down himself. Of course, he defied Batman by doing so. Of course, Dick Grayson always pushes the envelope, and of course that pisses off Batman, because he's sort of like the stern father. You do what I tell you, so because you got to stay alive, and then Batman being held accountable by Alfred. These are all, for longtime readers, this might be a little bit tropey, but I gotta say that Jeff Lemire, he understands the dynamic. The dynamic between Alfred and Batman is spot on. The way Alfred cares for Dick Grayson is spot on. This feels familiar to me. This feels like I'm reading the Batman and the Robin, i.e. Dick Grayson, that I know and love. And this is really good. There's my favorite scene is when they're sitting there's a full page spread. It's 4 panels long, and from top to bottom, and it's pretty much all silence. And they're driving the Batmobile. Batman is pissed off at Robin, and there's complete silence. You can tell Robin knows, or you can tell Dick Grayson knows he's got to keep his mouth shut. And he says, "But I," and Batman says, "Don't." It's just like it reads exactly like a parent and a son father and a son having a bout, having a moment of they're both angry and upset with each other. It's very well done. You get that father-son dynamic, you get that mentor-mentee dynamic, and you get that struggle, and you get that desire to want to impress, the desire to be accepted, and it really works well. And the angst of a young Dick Grayson and venting his frustration out on Batman, and I don't want to ruin it, but the manner and the way that Jeff Lemire scripts the story that ends in Robin, young Dick Grayson getting his Robin outfit. I really love how he did that, because it really shows, because this issue starts off with Batman, of course, being the a-hole that he often is, as that domineering father figure who's a control freak. But it ends with the more loving side of Batman that he rarely shows. And I thought it worked. It worked for me, and I think people are going to really enjoy this issue. And is this a one shot or is this a series?
No, it's 3 issues, I think. Yeah,
because this feels like a done in one story. This feels like a nice self-contained story to me. So I thought it was well done. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few threads that are going to continue, obviously, with the way there's some friction there with Dick and Bruce at the end, and then also there's what appears to be, and I want to say that this isn't the first time that I've seen this. There's a little bit of history here, but we get a little clue that perhaps Killer Croc, Waylon was part of the same circus as
right, yeah,
as the Flying Graysons were. So that's going to probably be explored as well. And I loved how Lemire threw that in at the end, because it called back to a scene in the middle of the issue where when Dick Grayson is out in his bright Robin costume for the first time, Killer Croc sees him and he's like, "Where did you get that costume?" Like, that makes sense. If he had a relationship with the Graysons before, why is he, that's why you would care so much about the costume. So yeah, there's a lot to like here. First of all, I'll say, so I have an interesting sort of feeling about Dustin Nguyen's art. So he does watercolor, which I don't particularly care for watercolor style. It's just a little messy for my taste. The art's not as clean, and anybody who's listened to the podcast a long time knows I like really clean traditional comic book art. But what I do like about Dustin Nguyen's art is that the tone of it, even though it's not necessarily as clean as I would like, the tone of the artwork is always spot on with the story that he's trying to tell. So it works with Ascender, Descender, and it works here, again, working with Jeff Lemire in this Robin Batman story. So I think on that level, very, very good. As far as the dynamic between Bruce and Dick, yeah, it's not what we necessarily know as their relationship is now, because this is the relationship as it very first started. And yeah, when Batman is out there watching Dick Grayson for the first time out in kind of a live environment, and he feels that Dick Grayson wasn't taking a big enough overview and endangered himself, and he gets mad at him. And yeah, just that growl, you can hear it in your head as you're reading it. Get in the damn car. He's just not happy with what Dick Grayson did. So I love that aspect of it. And in terms of this being an early story for Dick Grayson, what's missing, and one of the things I love about Dick Grayson so much as a character, where he's at now, is the belief he has in himself. The belief that not only is he going to succeed and overcome any obstacles, but the belief that he has in himself that the choices he's making, he's doing the right thing. Like, everybody knows that Dick Grayson is one of the most moral, upstanding characters in the DC universe. He very much is that beacon, right? Like, if Wally West embodies the hope of the DC universe, then Dick Grayson embodies the selflessness, the heroism of the DC
Yeah.
universe. And he doesn't have that here. He's just starting out. He's just a kid. He doesn't necessarily have that confidence in himself. And as we're privy to his thoughts, the way Lemire structures this, where we're reading kind of what Dick Grayson is writing in his diary or his journal, that comes across that he is unsure. He's unsure of, at one point when Batman tells him, okay, it's too soon. I don't feel like you did a good job when you're out there today. It's too soon. And Dick is wondering, does that really is that really what he believes and what he wants me to do, or is it a test? Is he testing me to see if I'll, push the boundaries, if I'll defy him because because I can make a difference and that sort of thing. So that confidence isn't there, and I like that because it very much shows us that this is a Dick Grayson who's just starting out. I also agree with you at the end when we see a little bit more of the compassionate side of Bruce Wayne. I think that worked very well. And the other thing that worked very well, it's the whole argument that, if Bruce Wayne really wanted to do what he was doing with his mission, how could he possibly justify putting kids in danger or whatever? And there's a scene with Alfred, when they're talking about what a dick Batman's being about not wanting Dick Grayson to go out there.
Yeah.
And I as a retcon story, or a story that's telling maybe some stuff that we've never seen before in terms of the Batman mythos, I think that works. I don't think 20 years ago it would have even been a question because that really hadn't come up. The fact that Batman's endangering children when you stop and think about it. But in this context, it makes a lot of sense. Where Batman says, I'm not going to bring home a dead child. I'm just not. If I think he's not ready, he won't go out there. So it may not make the most sense, when you stop and think about it. If you don't want to bring home a dead child, you'd never let him go out there, no matter how ready he thinks he is or how ready you think he is. You just don't put him in that line of fire. But then it wouldn't be a comic book. But I thought that was an interesting aspect to add in for Jeff Lemire. So yeah, I thought it worked very well.
We would be remiss if we didn't compliment the color scheme on the lettering, with bright red narration boxes, word balloons, with bright yellow for the words, amongst a red background. You definitely it enhances the feeling that this is Dick Grayson's Robin's thoughts, and it works really well. I thought it. So compliments to the letterer as well, which I don't think I even made a mental note of who the letterer was, but it was well done.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm glad you pointed out because it very much separates whose thoughts there. It's Steve Wands that does the letters.
Good job.
So, yeah. All right, up next, Superman versus Lobo, Book 2, from writers Tim Seeley and Sarah Beatty. Mirka Andolfo does the art, Arif Pranto on colors, and Fabio Amelia on letters. I think I mentioned this on social media, but I'll give a shout out here on the podcast. Big props to Tim Seeley, who I don't know if he actually listened to our review or not, but I know Tim and he's been on the show, I can't even remember how many, 3 or 4 times at this point. He sent me a signed copy of Superman versus Lobo #1. So,
did he?
Yeah, it showed up in my mailbox. I was very surprised. And I'm glad he did, because even though I sort of had mixed feelings and I'm not the biggest Lobo fan, I really, really enjoyed this second issue much, much more so than I did the first one. I mean, the first one was kind of a funny tongue-in-cheek. It felt very much like a Lobo story. And so if you're not familiar, if you didn't read the first one, it is Black Label, so it's out of continuity. But basically, Lobo's off on vacation at some intergalactic spa, and this giant amorphous type of alien shows up, basically, and attacks, and he ends up kind of saving the day, and then they end up going to Earth. So this alien says to Lobo, I owe you. Thanks for helping me out. Because apparently he's from another reality, and he came into our reality and was all confused, and that's what caused him to attack. So he owes Lobo a favor. Lobo decides he wants to go to Earth and take out Superman because he doesn't like Superman, basically. And meanwhile, Lex Luthor has launched his own version of Twitter, and it's all this misinformation on social media and whatnot. And so eventually Lobo and Superman team up, and they save this alien and help him sort of shrink back down to a more normal size and have more control and not be sort of out of control in this reality that he's not used to. And as a thanks, this villain says, "Oh, this alien says, "Oh, you guys are both the last survivors of your, doomed and destroyed planets. As a gift to you, because this alien has the ability to manipulate reality, as a gift, as a thank you to you, I'm going to restore your destroyed planets and put you back there so you can excuse me, so you can be among your loved ones that you lost." But he screws up and he sends Lobo to, as the last son of Krypton, sends Lobo to Krypton, and he sends Superman Kal-El to Caesarea. So it doesn't exactly work out for the best, and that's where this one picks up. And so there's a lot of in jokes. It's really pretty funny. The alien doesn't quite understand Twitter, and he sends messages back to Batman and Lois Lane from birds that are literally tweeting out his message. Um, and he at the end of it, he says, "That's it. That's the tweet," which many people put on Twitter. It's sort of a trope at this point. So I loved that. There were just so many little moments and little lines in here that had me chuckling, and that's how a Lobo Superman book should be. So the other thing that I really enjoy about it, with all the different hijinks and whatnot that go on with sort of a stranger in a strange land or fish out of water story, with them being swapped, or Freaky Friday is another good analogy that I've heard some people talking about on Twitter about this book. Each of the, and I think this is a 3-issue mini, and although it is telling, a story that's continuing from the first issue to the second, you very much can read them as a standalone. And even though this sort of fish out of the water, Freaky Friday part of the story comes to a conclusion here, we are going to get a part 3 that still has these same characters. It still has Lobo. It still has Superman. It still has Neiman, who's that sort of big amorphous blob of an alien, pink alien. And Lobo and Superman are going to have to go take out the Newman Revenge Squad, which, that's kind of a play on the Superman Revenge Squad that we've seen in the past. So, despite me not being that big of a Lobo fan, I am a fan of Tim Seeley. I think this is the first comic that Sarah Beatty's ever written. Well, she's worked with Tim Seeley on the Money Shot series over at Vault, I believe, but this is her first DC work, and I've never read anything from her before this. But this is working for me. It's just funny, I think with the characterization that Seeley and Beatty give to Superman sort of tempers the over the top of Lobo, which is usually why I don't read Lobo comics. I can only take him in small doses. So here, the fact that he's balanced out by Superman, it works for me. And yeah, I really am enjoying this. I will say the Mirko Andolfo art, and we've talked about this before, it's not quite as sort of clean and stylized as her art usually is. So I'm not sure why that is. Still great storyteller. She's a great visual storyteller, always has been. But I don't quite enjoy her art here as much as I normally do. And again, I'm not sure why that is. But overall, it works because, it's still her layouts and the storytelling is still really good. Again, the scripting and the in-jokes are hilarious. The colors by Arif Prianto are very bright and vibrant, which kind of suits a sort of a humor book like this. And this is working. Now, I know you're a much bigger Lobo fan than me, Rocky, so is this working for you as well?
It is, and you hit the nail on the head. This is funnier than the first issue. I thought the first issue was humorous. It didn't really blow me away, but it was entertaining. This was actually funny. I had some laugh out loud moments, which surprises me. Honestly, I've always found Tim Seeley to be a writer who he's always been what I would describe as serviceable. Like it's never been bad, but he's never really impressed the hell out of me. It's always been he's a serviceable writer. But this is one where I'm actually surprised that this is actually laugh out loud funny. There are some moments here. I mean, I found the page where Superman, the one Dr. Flick, she's falling in love with Lobo because he's so hot, and Superman's saying, are you serious? I hate Lobo, and I've spent time with Lex Luthor. even Darkseid's got more of a moral code than Lobo, he says. And she goes, yeah, I know, but I find him hot. And then Superman, but the casual sexism, I know. And the murder, I know. And, genocide, I know. it's actually funny. The dialogue works really well. And the funny thing is, there's a lot of dialogue in this issue. A lot.
Yep.
And often, a lot of dialogue doesn't work. This actually works. And this is, usually if you have too much dialogue, it's too bloated and it doesn't serve the story. This actually it's funny. It actually serves the comedy that plays itself out. And I mean, even this dialogue, some sexy Kryptonian in front of Lobo saying, "When the calluses on our fists were thick and the fabric around our asses was thin," and then Lobo says, "Yeah, maybe I ought to rethink my view of Krypton." I mean,
yeah, I love that line.
This is good. This is good. This is laugh out loud stuff here. So because normally when you read comics, often I find myself just going, and maybe a little smirk on my face. But it's not often that I will actually openly laugh, or my wife will look over and glance at me because I'm laughing. Because usually I'm doing it under my breath. But kudos to Seeley here. This was genuinely entertaining. For some reason, I found Andolfo's art actually better this issue than the first issue. It worked better for me. I thought these women, maybe her art's growing on me, but they were sexy. I mean, they were, sexy women. I love the provocative nature of this. I like how Superman is even maybe, he's not made fun of, but he's kind of like, he's not so super here. He sort of put it in his place. And I actually, if you're a Lobo fan, you're going to absolutely love this. For a completely, if you want Lobo to get his comeuppance, then you want to read Justice League Last Ride number 7 that we're going to be reviewing this week. That's something else entirely. But so it's a good week to be a Lobo fan, regardless of if you like Lobo, it's a good week to be a Lobo fan. And if you don't like Lobo, it's a good week to be a Lobo fan with what DC's got coming out.
Yeah, and I don't want to spoil. We don't want to spoil all the funny moments, but I'll just. The only other thing that I'll say about this is, if you are a fan of that classic line from Superman 2, "Kneel before Zod," there's a great moment. There's a great moment in this issue where, yeah, you'll see that line in a whole new light. So, all right, we're gonna move on. And while Rocky's grabbing the image for it, we're gonna talk about Joker next. It's Joker number 9. So James Tynion the fourth is the writer. There is a fill-in artist. It's Stefano Raphael, but his style is very reminiscent of Guillaume March. So I didn't even notice. I thought, I was like, Guillaume, the art is not quite as clean as Guillaume's art normally is. So I did look at the art just to see, and then sure enough, it's a different artist, but the style is very similar. Romulo Fajardo Jr. does the colors, and Tom Napolitano on letters. And then there is the continuation of the Punchline backup. We're up to chapter 9 now. It's written by Sam Johns and James Tynion. Art is by Rossi Campi. Colors by Marisa Louise. So give us your thoughts on the main story here, Rocky, with Jim Gordon and Vengeance.
Well, first I'm going to reiterate, and I think I've started off the last three issues of Joker that we reviewed. I've started off the same, and I'm going to reiterate again. I don't care that the Joker is not the main star in this series. This is just a really good story. Quite frankly, I mean, hey, if you're going to deceive me and drag me into a Joker story, and Joker's not in it as much as he normally is, but the story's this good, I got no problem with it at all. The irony is that I actually find Joker more interesting because of this, because it's, as we said before, it's how other characters react to the Joker, and it's what the Joker brings out in these characters that, for all intents and purposes, of course, this is the Joker story. Vengeance hates the Joker. Commissioner Gordon has been hired to take out the Joker, but it's the character arcs that those two characters go through that define the central narrative here. The Samson family wants to kill the Joker. Everybody wants to kill the Joker. Everybody's looking for the Joker. Meanwhile, the Joker is part of, as communicated with the head of the network. And the network is this organization that essentially, it's a sophisticated organization, sort of hides criminals around the world at various resorts. But they also have something, and they're engaged in something far more sinister. And that involves actually selling, as crazy as it sounds, human body parts for food, for selling human meat. And of course, this was sort of hinted at because we knew the Sampson family. And the Sampson family, just to be clear, the Sampson family, the head of the Sampson family, one of the sons of the Sampsons family, Billy Sampson, was killed by the Joker, it is believed, in A-Day, Arkham Day, which sort of set off the whole fear state over in the pages of Batman. And so now everybody, the Sampson family wants Joker dead. The Vengeance, the daughter of Bane, wants the Joker dead because everyone's blaming the Joker for everything. Commissioner Gordon's been hired and he's going to be paid $25 million to kill the Joker. And yet, so I find it absolutely astonishing that so many people are just taken aback by this. Where's the Joker? Like, are you kidding? Come on. Now, granted, he's not in every panel, and that's really what they mean. But I will say that when the Joker does show up, and there's a great scene in here where Commissioner Gordon and Vengeance show up and they confront Joker, who's sitting beside one of the head executives of the network. And when the Joker says on that page, "Jimbo, you made it," it's almost like the Joker. He's staring at the reader with his one red eye, one red eyeball and green eyeball. And finally, the reader's, there's the Joker. Now we're going to have this confrontation. And right away, Vengeance, daughter of Bane, attacks the Joker, only to be taken out right away by some code word or some hidden, I think, code word that this network executive had, that somehow they can control Vengeance because Vengeance was essentially, there's this sophisticated cloning technology where the network not only hides and protects criminals, but will replace them in jail. So if you think where a criminal dies in prison, it's not really that criminal who died, but an exact cloned duplicate of the criminal. And they have this sophisticated network that they protect criminals. And I find that absolutely fascinating. And boy, doesn't it make sense that the Joker would know all about that and be affiliated with a network like that? It just makes sense. The Joker always seems to be ahead of everyone else. And I really liked how this, I was really fascinated with this. I thought it was a little bit over the top that really there's people all over the world. There's apparently there's restaurants you can go to where there's a secret menu where you can eat human flesh. I think that's a little bit over the top, but hey, hey, what else do you do? If you're a multi-billionaire, you can't all be like Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, some people are pedophiles and some people eat human flesh, apparently, in the DC universe. I don't know, but there's definitely a dark aspect to this. And in that respect, that's right in keeping with the Joker. And even there's this creepy executive. It's just, everything about this is creepy. And the perfect artist for that, I mean, Guillaume March here, I mean, it's really good. It's Guillaume March, this issue, isn't it? Is it still him?
Stefano, I was talking about that. Stefano. Stefano Raphael.
Okay, I stand corrected.
But very much his art looks almost exactly like Guillaume March.
I questioned myself because when I looked at it, I did think, well, maybe it's not Guillaume March, but in any event, it works, and I just really like this. I like this story. I love the fact that they tried cloning the Joker, but you can't clone the Joker because the Joker's DNA has been all screwed up by the process, an accident that turned his face white. But I like the fact that the network tried to clone the Joker, but just didn't work. But they were successful in cloning Bane. That's how they ended up with Vengeance. And it's just, this is very, very interesting. Now, people who choose to ignore this great story, and I'm being critical here of the people that don't like this story, because I love this story. I think this is great. And people are going to say, well, this is about the network. This is about the origin of Vengeance. This is about Commissioner Gordon's angst that we've heard this story before. I don't think we have, really. I don't care. I'm fascinated with all these new characters we've met. I'm fascinated with this network. I love this Sampson family. They're sick and demented. I love the fact that at the end here, the Sampson family has finally incapacitated the Joker. So they're going to take Joker back, and the Sampson family is probably going to want to eat the Joker, literally.
Yeah,
how demented can you get?
Yeah, they said they were wanting to slow roast him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I'm loving this. Like, this to me is sheer entertainment. I mean, ah, my God. And here, Commissioner Gordon, he's in the middle of this absolute cluster, Fuck. Wow. And, Commissioner Gordon, you know, you know, he's being attacked by this network guy and then with the Joker and he's deciding whether or not to call Oracle because he has an opportunity to take out the Joker, but should he do it, he should probably call Oracle because it comes to a head now because remember is Commissioner Gordon going to abandon his morals? His moral code that's been developed for his entire career. He's lost so much because of the Joker. He finally has a chance to take him out. Is he going to take that opportunity, or is he going to call for help for Oracle or Batman? And at the end here, Commissioner Gordon is he's seemingly taken out. He seems to be stabbed and he's dying. So is he gonna he tries to call for help for Oracle? Perhaps he waited too long. What's going to happen? We got the Joker being captured by the Samson family now. I mean, everything's coming to a head, and man, I like this. I like this. Commissioner Gordon seems to be off the table. The Joker's taken down, and we're at issue 9. And is this 12 issues or 10 issues?
I don't know that they said.
It's an ongoing, isn't it? I think it's an ongoing.
Yeah, but I was going to actually mention that because the thing is, yes, it's called the Joker, and we've talked at length about how it's not really a Joker. Joker's not the main character of this, and he never was meant to be. And if you're a subscriber to James Tynion's Substack and you've read his newsletters where he's talked about the evolution and the way his run on Batman played out, and he was talking about when he was pitching things, and yeah, he very much was pitching a Joker a title called Joker that didn't have the Joker in it, that was about a young college age guy who was so fascinated with serial killers and specifically the Joker that he ends up becoming a serial killer himself. So yes, it was called the Joker, but the title was more about the effect the Joker has on someone else, the effect that he has on DC Universe at large. Obviously, this story is not that story, but it's in the same vein in terms of, even though this title is called the Joker, it's more about the fallout, the consequences. What does the fact that the Joker exists, and what does the fact that the Joker chooses to do these horrible, demented things, what does that do to other characters in the DC Universe? That's what this is. And though the reason I bring it back around to how long this is going to last is we know James Tynion is leaving DC. At least he's leaving Batman. He no longer is going to be exclusive at DC. He still has his nice house on the lake series it's on hiatus right now, but it's going to continue in the new year. His Batman series is almost done. It'll be done with the end of Fear State, and he also is finishing up his Joker run. I hope that they end the series when James Tynion is done. And if they want to tell, or they want to have a Joker story, the sales were great on this, we want to have a Joker title that stars the Joker, that they started over with a new #1. So this can stand on its own as a Joker title where the Joker is not the main character. I just don't have confidence that somebody else can come in and give it the same sort of tone and feel that Tynion has given it. And the worst thing would be if Tynion's story is 12 issues or 14 issues or whatever, to have it start with issue 15 and now the Joker is the main character, because that's not the point of this series. So I hope if they do decide they want a Joker title that they start over. And I won't read and I debated on reading this. But obviously we get the press copy, so why not? Plus that Mark Brooks Joker or Harley Punchline car Joker Punchline car cover was amazing for the first issue, and I'm glad I'm reading it because it's not a Joker story. It's a story. It's really a Jim Gordon story more than anything else, and I'm loving it. And as far as the whole idea or whole reveal that this guy was creating what did he say? Did he call him? I think he called them brain dead human cadavers that were basically just cattle to be sold. Yeah, that was a little cringeworthy. And for a moment, I had forgotten about the whole cannibalism aspect with the Sawyer family, and that brought it back with a big sledgehammer to my brain. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. A little bit of James Tynion's affinity for horror coming through there, and I definitely could do without it, but it is an aspect of the story that does add some consequences. Um, so yeah, as far as the events of the issue, I don't have much more to add than what Rocky said. There's a lot going on, a lot of action, and James Gordon is thrown in the middle of this cluster F, and even he doesn't know how to feel about it. And uh, the issue started out, after he teamed up sort of with Vengeance last issue, and they're on a Jeep ride heading to where they think the Joker is, and Jim Gordon is telling his story, telling his history with the Joker to Vengeance, and as he's saying it, as he's hearing it out loud, it's reinforcing, yes, that he really does want the Joker to die, and he realizes what he's doing, because he doesn't feel like he could necessarily um, pull the trigger, and that was talked about in the first couple of issues. He's hired to take out the Joker. Could he really do it? That's not who he is. But as he's telling the story, realizing he really does want the Joker dead, as he's recounting these events and the way the Joker's negatively affected his life and his family, he says, it's funny, when it all began, I really didn't think I could go through with this being killing the Joker, but I can see what I'm doing. He can see what he's doing right now in agreeing to team up with Vengeance and then recounting his Joker experiences with Vengeance. He says, I'm loading a gun whose trigger I will not have to pull. And if that's not the single greatest line that Tynion has written in this story so far, I don't know
Yeah.
what is. I absolutely loved that. Thought that was so great, and
Yeah.
you can understand, because we get a recap ourselves of
Yeah.
all the horror that the Joker has caused the Gordon families, from Killing Joke to what happened to Jim Gordon's second wife, Sarah Essen, in during the Cataclysm era of Gotham, and then the most recent Joker War stuff with the You're the
Yeah.
Villain,
And Death
and
in the
that
Family.
kind of, and yeah, and Death in the Family, like all, you can understand why Gordon would want the Joker dead, but you also, that line makes so much sense because it totally jives with who we know Jim Gordon to be as an upstanding guy who didn't give into the corruption of the GCPD. Yes, he wants the Joker dead. No, he can't pull the trigger himself. And he's even struggling with this, knowing that what he's doing is he's loading a gun whose trigger he won't have to pull. I just thought that line was absolutely fantastic.
And
By
it
far.
there is one. It does end with a major tease because the network, apparently, it's hinted at from a page, the final page with Oracle. It shows a picture of Talon and a DNA match with James Gordon Jr. So
Yep.
it might be that Jim Gordon's son is still alive, or at least a cloned version of him is
Well,
hinted.
the
That
Talons,
might.
remember that the Talons are brought back from the dead.
Well, yeah, well, fair enough. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there you go. So is he part of the network or just the Talons, or I don't know. I mean, either way, it's fascinating. It's interesting, and it adds. There's no question that this is more of a Jim Gordon story told through the I guess the almost like the metaphor of the Joker. The Joker is. But the Joker is everywhere, is permeating everywhere here, and the presence of the Joker is controlling the flow of this narrative. And I don't know, I'm just loving this for a comic book that's called The Joker, that everybody's complaining about doesn't have the Joker in it. It sure feels like the Joker's in this story quite a bit in my mind. But hey, maybe I'm an outlier.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. Can't recommend it highly enough. So, all right, moving on. Next, we have Teen Titans United #3. This is
Oh,
from
we're
writer
not going to
Cavan.
talk. Sorry, we're not going to talk about the backup,
The
the
backup.
punchline
Right.
backup, chapter 9.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about it.
It never ends. This
Yeah,
story is never ending. I can't
so
believe.
much that so much that I wanted to just skip over it. Almost the whole story takes place in the office of one of the attorneys who's going to be prosecuting um, Punchline. We know she's in jail, and we know it's the whole, she's trying to play the victim with what she did with Joker War or whatever. It didn't move the story along uh, a huge amount, but some of the pieces are starting to come together. But yeah, just I guess because it does feel like it's sort of moving to the final stage of the story, that I did kind of enjoy it more, because it felt like we were stuck in the prison forever. Now we're talking about the trial finally starting. So I don't know. I sort of liked it better than some of the previous iterations, but yeah, it's still my biggest complaint about the story is this thing is moving at a snail's pace. But I thought the art and the dialogue and other than the pacing, technically it's a well put together comic. But again, it's about a character I don't really care about, Punchline, and I'm more than done with the whole idea of people doing horrific things in real life and getting away with it by hiring spin doctors, basically, and say, no, that's not what really happened. Too much of that in the real world. I don't need it in my comics as well. So,
Yeah, I agree. This story just never really worked from the beginning. I actually like the character of Punchline. I thought she had a lot of potential, and I just think it's she's been approached in the wrong way. I don't like what Tynion has done with her, and I find myself constantly playing script doctor because boy, I would not have. Punchline is just not the interesting character she could be. The way that Sam Johns and James Tynion IV have scripted this, we're at chapter 9 of this. This is awful. This is just plain awful. I mean, in a nutshell, I mean, the characters, the actions, the story, it makes so little sense. Just plain stupidity from beginning to end. I mean, apparently Punchline's master plan was to, Punchline's in prison and the person just the nonsense of it. I mean, how stupid the police are. The character that's going to be testifying against Punchline is in the same prison as Punchline, and nobody thinks of removing her. So then Punchline actually had the master plan of believing that Bluebird would try to rescue the person in prison, and then when Bluebird goes in, then Punchline, they had their altercation. Bluebird escapes with the key witness that will now testify against Punchline. Meanwhile, Punchline, they can't now. Leslie Tompkins doesn't. You got to be careful because if the media finds out that Bluebird was in prison and then that could be used as a way to get Punchline off to get her any possibility of conviction, it's going to be eliminated because it might look like they were trying to set her up. And anyways, it was just a awful story. This is just terrible. It just didn't work. It was there was so many things that were wrong with it, and Punchline is just a dumb, uninteresting character at this point, and it's so sad because I think that had she been done right, she could have really been a reflection of the darker side of social media. That's how I viewed the character. She should be the darker side of social media and very manipulative of her own right and have her own agency in that regard. But now she's just a stupid brunette, purple-haired pawn of the Joker, and it's just plain stupid. And with storylines like this, it's not doing it any favors.
yeah. Well, the other aspect of this is we know she's not going to be found guilty. We know she's going to be out there,
Yeah.
because she's a DC villain. So
Yeah.
why are you dragging this out?
Yeah, this was not handled well at all. And way too long. 9 chapters. Come on. Are you kidding
I
me?
wouldn't be surprised to see it last the length of whatever the whole Joker regular story run is. So anyway, let's move on. Like I said, Titans United #3 from writer Cavan Scott. Jose Luis handles the pencils. Jonas Trindad on inks. Rex Locust on colors. The art's fantastic, like it has been throughout. We've talked before about the Jose Luis, Trindad, Rex Locust trio here. Just fantastic dynamic art, really fine line work, great transitions from panel to panel, interesting layouts. The colors are very bright, which gives it this traditional sort of classic DC Comics feel. And while the characterization of the Titans here, because this is very much the Titans group, not necessarily the Teen Titans. And we've talked before about how that might be sort of trying to capitalize on the popularity of the Titans streaming show that comes on HBO Max, I guess now. And all that works for me very, very well, just because the relationship between Jason Todd and Nightwing, or Jason Todd and Superboy Connell, isn't necessarily what it is in other comics. I'm okay with that because in my mind, this sort of lives in its own little pocket of the DC universe. So with the constraints of continuity kind of thrown to the side, this is just a fun, classic DC story with a lot of action and interesting characters. The last person I expected to show up to be sort of the big bad that we saw at the end of issue 2 was Blackfire, Starfire's sister.
I love Blackfire. She's hot and she's sexy and she's kind of a bitch. She's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. She's a great villain. Yeah. And the other person here, Elaine Marshall Morton, Vic, this professional assassin,
Lady Vic.
she's she's a great villain as well. And so for me, this is working. The whole idea of tying into Cadmus, which is another reference to the triangle era of Superman. Cavan Scott clearly is a DC fan, and he's pulling from the history of the Teen Titans, with Blackfire being the villain here, and with Cadmus references and whatnot. And beautiful art from Jose Luis. I especially like the way he draws Donna Troy. This just works for me. It's just a fun comic where you don't have to worry about anything that's going on in the DC universe. You don't have to know anything about Fear State or Future State or Infinite Frontier or whatever. You can just read this. It stands on its own, and it's just a whole heck of a lot of fun. So I'm really enjoying it.
I couldn't. I couldn't agree more. This was, and it actually, it's sad to say, but look, I'm generally enjoying the DC universe, but I have to say I'm kind of glad that this Titans issue just seems divorced from the rest of the DCU right now, because the rest of the DCU does feel a little bit convoluted, and this is sort of like just brainless fun in a good way. With a really good story, I love the art. It's bright. It's traditional DC. Women are sexy. The fight scenes are awesome. It's action packed, and you got. The good Lord, I don't think Blackfire's been drawn this sexy in a lot. This is a gorgeous villain. Good Lord. This is good stuff. I'm definitely. This is just a lot of fun. I actually, trying to fit this into the continuity of the rest of the, don't even bother. It's like, no, because it has to be, I'm pretty sure it's divorced, but it doesn't really matter. This is just a lot of fun. There's a great extended sequence here where Superboy is being attacked by, sort of manipulated by Blackfire and her sort of like mechanical beast. And meanwhile, Donna Troy and Raven are taken, and Red Hood are taken on Lady Vic, and there's just the juxtaposition between those two fight scenes, where ultimately at the end, quite frankly, story-wise, not a lot happens. Actually, not a lot happens. We don't get a lot of story progression from the end of the last issue to the end of this issue. It's just fun. It's just fun. These are glorified, action-packed sequences with actually fun dialogue, good dialogue. And with Jason Todd being pulled by a plane, that Donna Troy actually loses her own lasso to actually pull this jetliner back to save Jason Todd. This was creative use of storytelling. We don't always often talk about it, but choreographing a fight scene, scripting a fight scene as a writer, I think it can be very challenging, I think, for writers, because I wouldn't want to do it, because I'm not much of a fighter, and I guess, how do you do that? But I like the creativity here that comes into play on multiple fronts. There's a lot of moving parts in this issue. It works very well. The art is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. This is the Teen Titans that I know and love. And for those that like younger Teen Titans, you got Tim Sheridan over at Teen Titans Academy. It's not really my cup of tea, but that's because I'm older school and I like these older established characters. And boy, it's great to see Blackfire and Donna Troy, like you said.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. So, all right. Well, you already mentioned this next book we're going to talk about. So while you pull up the picture on it, I'll give the credits. Okay. It's the final issue. I'm sad to see that it's over because we really enjoyed it. It's Justice League Last Ride number 7. Chip Zdarsky is the writer. Miguel Mendonca, in my mind, has given us the best art of his career. It's absolutely fantastic. Enrica Angiolini does the colors and world design on letters. And yeah, this was just, wow. It was so spectacular. I mentioned at the top that I don't want to say I was disappointed with the way that it ended, but I thought it was interesting the choices that they made, and not necessarily in the story beats, but sort of in the way the story was structured, I thought. But I'll let you go first and give us your thoughts, and then I'll give. And I almost feel bad because I enjoyed it so much that I'm going to nitpick it a little bit. But there's just one moment that it kind of surprised me the way they handled it. But anyway, what did you think of this conclusion?
it. I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied. You're right that you can nitpick the conclusion here, but there's some elements that I like. I I actually like that Martian Manhunter came back alive again. That was good. He came back. That was last issue even. But I like how they used him here. He ends up being like the essence of the new Oa, and Oa is revitalized. I like these scenes between Hal Jordan refusing to give up and ultimately taking out Darkseid instead of just letting Darkseid go. Hal Jordan could not just let it go and leave it to the man with the greatest willpower in the universe to take out Darkseid in a spectacular fashion with a bunch of bombs. I mean, it was great. The scene between Wonder Woman and Lobo. I mean, my God. The minute, the last issue, there was a great scene last issue where Batman actually paid off Lobo and basically paid off Lobo with sort of galactic credits to basically hire Lobo to help them defeat the forces of Darkseid that were against them and the Cyborg, Superman, etc. And at the end of that, they need to take Lobo off the field. And the way Wonder Woman does it with that sword, in the same way she took out Granny Goodness in the first issue, and involving the separating of one's head from one's neck. And of course he's a Zarnian, so it doesn't kill Lobo, but fantastic scenes. There's great moments here that are a callback to the first issue, particularly between Batman and Superman, where the way that Chip Zardasky, the writer, utilizes the dialogue, and these are characters that know each other. Batman throwing himself to take out Cyborg Superman, knowing he's going to be easily thrown aside, but of course, why would Batman be so stupid? Well, he puts a bomb on Cyborg Superman's chest, and he just looks at Superman and says, "Heat vision," and Superman right away sees it was all tactical. Everything Batman does is for a reason. No matter how suicidal it may look, he's always 10 steps ahead of every villain he fights against and every ally he fights with. And that's the beauty of Batman. Zardasky shows that off here to great effect. Batman ends up, ironically enough, getting stabbed with a kryptonite knife. And there's a great line here where Superman says, "Bruce, you idiot." And Batman says to him, I can't let you get yourself killed. You'd be furious with me. Which is a wonderful callback to the fact that these are two superheroes that have been at each other's throats, angst-ridden over their perceived failure in Martian Manhunter dying, and both of them feeling a sense of failure, and Batman feeling that he failed Superman by not being able to prevent Martian Manhunter's death. Well, there's some redemption there in that line of dialogue. It said so much, because it revealed that, because Batman's not a touchy-feely kind of guy. You always got to read in between the lines with Batman, and that was a great way for Zardasky to do that. Works so well. Darkseid looks so domineering and cruel and epically boisterous and evil. I never thought of Darkseid being cool, but powered up by the, I guess, Green Lantern Owen energy. But it really works here. Great to see John Stewart playing a role, working with Martian Manhunter. They fight together. Great scene with Wonder Woman again and Lobo. Humor, action, fun. As far as nitpicking, I guess, I don't know. I guess I could take, I suppose I like the choreography. I suppose I question whether or not, I actually don't know, for example, if Darkseid is dead or not at the end of this. I don't know. Did Hal Jordan kill Darkseid, or was he just rendered unconscious? I'm not really sure, but it's not really important that I know. I thought this was satisfying all around. Artistically, this was a big win for me. I love this. I love the fact that this entire series is artistically consistent. It had, to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure the art seemed the same to me every issue. Maybe you can correct me, but I think it's the same artist every issue, yeah, which is nice because it feels artistically consistent. This is going to be a beautiful full trade paperback. I hope this sells well, because in my view, it deserves it. This is a great full story with fantastic art. It captures the essence of the characters, and you don't need to be beholden to existing DC continuity. It's really a narrative in and of itself that works well on its own. And again, said earlier about if you're a Lobo fan, if you like the humorous side of Lobo and you love the character, you got the Black Label series, Superman and Lobo. And if you really don't like Lobo, if you feel like Lobo, like Wonder Woman feels like Lobo, you're really going to enjoy this issue. And yeah, I'll stop talking now, man. What do you think?
Yeah, fantastic. And you do raise an interesting point about selling well in trade. I hope it sells as well. I mean, Justice League traditional 7 members, usually Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Martian Manhunter. He's the one that everybody forgets was a founding member. Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, and Aquaman. So we still have 7 here, but instead of Aquaman, we get John Stewart, which makes a lot of sense in terms of this being a story that takes place out in space. There is no Aquaman. The other aspect is that obviously Darkseid takes over Hal Jordan as we was a big sort of twist and turn. But yeah, it ends up just working on a very visceral level to be sort of just a quintessential Justice League story, despite maybe the lineup not exactly being what you think. I mean, there's no Cyborg. He sort of replaced Martian Manhunter in the New 52 as a founding member. That I always didn't really like that. To me, Cyborg should be over there with the Titans. Not that he can't be a member, but shouldn't be a founding member of the Justice League. But you're right. The story worked on so many levels, especially because there was so much dysfunction, and you see the team through kind of adversity come back together as you always knew they would. Of course, helped by the fact that even though Martian Manhunter's physical body was destroyed, he was trapped within kind of the center of Apocalypse. And once Darkseid unleashes his own willpower to sort of repower Apocalypse, Martian Manhunter is able to use part of that. And the way he merges with John Stewart is very effective. I agree with you about the scene with Wonder Woman cutting off Lobo's head was fantastic, and a little moment of humor there where Lobo says, "You know how long it takes me to grow my body back?" So that leads me to wonder why people don't do that more often to Lobo. You know what? I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to cut your head off, and at least it'll take you out, for a few weeks or however long it takes you to grow a new body. So that worked as well. So yeah, I thought it was fantastic. The art, I mentioned it time and time again how fantastic it was. It's interesting. I sort of expected a more, I don't want to say depressing ending, but this ends in such a way where it can be open to so much more. Justice League Universal is the title of the issue, and we see that Justice League has now established a base on the moon, and Bruce Wayne has said, we need to address needs beyond Earth. We're no longer American or international. We're Justice League Universal, becoming a bigger player in the galaxy and the universe to stop menaces before they start. That works for me. If Zardasky was to do a series like that, I would definitely be along for the ride. But by ending it that way and leaving it more open, it did surprise me a little bit. Like I almost felt like we were leading up to somebody having to make a sacrifice, whether that be Superman or Batman or whoever, and we're going to end up with more dead Justice Leaguers rather than less, because we actually get the return of Martian Manhunter. He continues to exist, even though he's bonded to New Oa, it's called, or what used to be Apocalypse. So at least he's there, and the Green Lantern Corps is going to be rebuilt, and Martian Manhunter will be the first guardian and part of the council that decides on what the role of the Green Lanterns are. So again, very much ends on a hopeful note with a bright future. And based on sort of the angst and emotion of the way the series started, I didn't necessarily think it was going to end that way. But I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with the way it ended. And again, if Zardasky's going to revisit this, I would be totally on board. The one thing that surprised me, the one little nitpick I have is, and you kind of mentioned it, we don't know is Darkseid killed here, which I don't necessarily. I mean, typically I don't like my heroes to kill, but you could certainly understand
Yeah.
Hal Jordan doing this, right? Like
Yeah.
if he was possessed by Darkseid for years, as we're told, and subjected to that evil, you could totally understand him not wanting Darkseid to escape, and you could understand him kind of cutting loose like this. And no one's going to care, right? Like in terms of Superman killing somebody in Man of Steel, or Wonder Woman snapping Max Overlord's neck, and people want to create controversy there. Nobody's going to care that Hal Jordan apparently killed Darkseid, although maybe that's why Zardasky chose not to actually show it.
Yeah.
Argument could be made, well, he's just knocked out, just unconscious, he's in prison somewhere. But my biggest, I don't want to say complaint, but just maybe surprise, is the fact that this wasn't depicted in a different way. Like, it's these boom nukes that Darkseid was going to actually send to Earth and have explode that Hal Jordan was able to capture. And then
Yeah.
as Darkseid tries to leave to fight another day, uh, Hal goes, no bleeping chance, and he throws all these nukes at Darkseid and it explodes. And it's not even a full page splash. Like, we're
Uh,
supposed to
uh,
think Darkseid was killed. I mean, you would almost expect a double page splash, and it was almost like, yeah, we took out Darkseid, but just based on the panel size, it was almost a little anticlimactic. Did you get that
yeah.
feeling at all?
Yeah, I mean, it actually kind of surprised me, and if I might be misremembering this, but I thought that at I thought in the first issue of this series, Zardasky mentioned that the Green Lanterns were powerless against Yellow, or maybe I'm confusing my series, but I thought he sort of mixed up his Green Lantern lore a little bit, but because here, in any event, I note that all these boom tube bombs, they're yellow, but obviously Hal Jordan had no problem using his ring to throw them all on Darkseid. I don't know how Darkseid could survive that. Although I realize he's an Omega level threat, but in any event, I don't really care. I'm kind of glad that I think the beauty of this story is that readers, I think we can decide that however you like. I like to think Hal Jordan has. I like to think that Hal Jordan killed Darkseid myself, because I mean the look of determination on Hal Jordan's face is just like, grim and gritty. But the thing is, I will admit that if Darkseid was just incapacitated, I can't see Hal Jordan just letting Darkseid float in the dead of space. Like, why did
Yeah.
he just? Do you know what I mean? That doesn't really make sense. So I'm assuming he was likely vaporized, or maybe when these boom tube bombs explode, they sent Darkseid into another multiverse or something like that. But I don't know. But it's either way, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're nitpicking, and
Yeah.
now there is only one dark side supposedly for all the omniverse. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. But I agree, and I know that DC got rid of, because I thought the same thing.
Mhm.
Obviously, this is a different. It's not main continuity or whatever. We know that when Jeff Johns with the whole parallax thing removed the weakness against yellow, so I
Yeah.
guess I assume that the same thing here. But yeah,
Yeah.
but all in all, a fantastic series. And like I said, if Zdarsky does a Justice League Universal story, I'll be there for sure. So,
Yeah.
all right, up next we have Pennyworth #4 from writer Scott Bryan Wilson. Juan Gedeon is the artist. John Roush on colors, and AW's DC Hopkins on letters. Again, this is much like the Pennyworth TV series that used to come on Epix, and I think now has moved over to HBO Max. It just got renewed for a third season. It's the story of Alfred Pennyworth when he was in MI5, kind of a spy, as it were. Um, there's not a whole heck of a lot that happens in this issue. It's more a transitional issue. We see Pennyworth escape. We know he got betrayed by his partner, who is also the love of his life, Shirley, who he grew up with. In terms of his family, worked for Shirley's family. Shirley's family was very wealthy. His dad was a butler to Shirley's father. He grew up in the servants' quarters there. They've known each other their whole lives, and he feels betrayed, and so he's trying to escape. He's in this Arctic desolate area where this weapons facility is falling down around his ears, and he's got to find a way to escape and then try to survive in this very bleak, hostile environment, all the while trying to reconcile this betrayal. And he's trying to convince himself that maybe she's playing the long game, and she's still undercover and whatnot. And then he sort of realizes that's not the case. And then there's a couple of scenes of how this everything that's going on in the past is tied into something that's happening with Alfred in current time, because he and his old mate from the spy game are captured and being held prisoner, but we don't get to see any faces or know who has captured him or why. So he's thinking back and remembering all these things that he's gone through while he's trying to build himself an igloo after he escaped this weapons facility to try to build some shelter so he can survive. But it very much ends on a cliffhanger. He's not able to complete that. And like I said, a little bit of a down issue. Doesn't really advance the story much. It's more about giving context to the betrayal he felt and giving us a little bit more scenes in current time where it appears that he's sort of outclassed by the guy that has captured him, because he did manage to escape from the chair that he was tied to. But when his captor enters the room he's in and Alfred attacks, he gets knocked on his butt pretty easily. So again, it's very much a James Bond feel, sort of that whole Cold War spy story. And I am enjoying it. It adds context and um,
Yeah.
background to who Alfred Pennyworth is as a character. And even though he's dead right now in current DC continuity and present time, he's going to come back. He's always a character that I've very much enjoyed. And when you give him this context and see how formidable a person that he was, in terms of, this guy's not just a butler. He's done so much in his life, special forces, espionage, and whatnot, and it makes him the kind of the perfect partner for Bruce Wayne, the perfect partner for Batman to help, not only raise him after his parents were killed, but to be his right hand when Bruce is out there being Batman. So I like this. It adds to the complexity and the background of Alfred, and I just hope that he comes back in the regular DC continuity soon, because I miss him for sure. So any thoughts on this, Rocky?
Yeah, well, not much to add to what you said. I enjoyed this. I mean, Alfred is a survivor. And this whole thing, surviving in the winter and super spy and always finds a way to stay alive. I mean, you could definitely see, is it really surprising that this guy's ultimately ends up being the butler to Batman? I mean, no, it really isn't. There's a really odd, who's the writer here?
Scott Bryan Wilson,
because the writer's got an odd habit here. Every now and then on one of the panels, he's like, there's one panel where the older Alfred is struggling to stand, and there's like arrows pointing to Alfred's knees, and in the caption it says, "Not what they used to be." And then there'll be another panel where younger Alfred's in the snow, in the barren snow, and there'll be a panel that says, pointing to the background saying, "Wild, barren, empty nothingness." It's almost as if the artist or the letter wrote down something from the comic script, that wasn't supposed to be on the page. Like none of this needs to be on the page. I mean, we already know it's a wild, barren, empty nothingness. The art tells us that. I don't know why they're telling us that. It's the oddest thing those watching on YouTube can see this, but for those listening on the podcast, there's literally there's arrows pointing to areas in the art describing what is being drawn. I mean, it's the oddest thing. There's even one panel where there's arrows pointing to the ceiling, and it actually says, starting to collapse. Well, we know that because the art tells us that. And then there's a fight scene with an arrow pointing to Alfred's mouth, and it says, trying not to inhale smoke. Well, again, can we not assume that from the art? It's the oddest thing. And yet this is something that I haven't mentioned, but it's been in every single issue since issue 1. This is clearly something that's intentional on the part of the writer and the artist. And I find it a really odd thing because it's completely unnecessary and it doesn't really enhance the narrative. It doesn't take away from it, but it's almost comical at this point. So it's kind of an odd, interesting approach.
I think it's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be sort of tongue in cheek. That's the way I take it anyway. But yeah, it is kind of funny. So
yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on. Wonder Woman number 781 is next, starting a new chapter in the life of Wonder Woman, Through a Glass Darkly, Part 1, written by Michael W. Conrad and Becky Cloonan. Marcio Takara is the artist. Tamara Bonvillain does the colors, and Pat Brosso on letters. And the main cover is a Terry Dodson and Rachel Dodson cover that I really enjoyed, actually. But I'm curious, you're much more of the Wonder Woman expert than me, Rocky. What do you think of this issue?
Well, first, I just want to be clear. I've read a lot of. I'm not saying I'm a Wonder Woman expert. It just sort of bothers me that this is. I don't know. I'm just getting frustrated because and now I clicked on the wrong comic, so I gotta buy some time for myself. But look, Wonder Woman, we finally got Wonder Woman where she's back on Earth, right? And last issue was her sort of settling in, and now I was hoping that with issue 781 we would finally have Wonder Woman do what she was supposed to do at the beginning, because I don't know, like I think Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad as writers, I think they missed the memo coming out of Death Metal that the whole reason why Wonder Woman didn't join the Quintessence and thereby avoiding being killed by Darkseid, she didn't want to become part of the Quintessence. In other words, Diana did not assume a higher place in the multiverse because she chose to come back because the cosmic gods told her that there was this looming threat that was going to be, be a danger to the universe. So that's why she decided to come back. And Wonder Woman now is finally back. And what do we get in this issue? Now, so I'm sorry, but I'm gonna rant. And all this issue consists. So she has lunch with Ada Candy, and they just have lunch. They talk about Steve Trevor. They talk about Dr. Psycho, or Dr. I guess Kizko, or he's Dr. Psycho, who we saw in the first story arc where Valhalla, where he was involved with the machinations involving the Valkyrie and Wonder Woman's angsting over the fact she doesn't want to talk to Steve. So, and then she nonsensically, Wonder Woman wants to go and she talks with Deadman, Boston Brand. Now, why does she want to talk to Boston Brand? Like, this is what doesn't make sense. Now, for some reason, I guess Cloonan and Conrad, as writers, they really want to establish some sort of rapport between Deadman and Wonder Woman. Now, what doesn't make any sense is Wonder Woman's love interest in the first 10 issues was Siegfried, right? And he's technically, now that she's back in the present, Siegfried's been dead now for thousands of years, and he's basically in Valhalla now. And before Wonder Woman left, when they separated, Siegfried gave Wonder Woman a gift of his sword. He gave her his sword. For some reason now, Wonder Woman feels compelled to return the sword to his resting place. Why? This is ridiculous. He gave you the sword for a reason. Use it. Also, aren't you supposed to be looking for the looming threat? How come you're not contacting Justice League Incarnate? How come you're not doing that? Why are we getting this story? Why is she going to Deadman to try to go to the resting place of Siegfried to give him the sword back? Why? This makes no sense to me. There's no connection. It's just it's just craziness to me. And it's boring as hell. It's boring. Nothing happens. And she goes, and then Deadman uses his powers to sense where Siegfried is. Well, we know he's dead. Well, okay, so now we're going to find where the graveyard of Siegfried is so you can go return the sword. Does this constitute excitement? Is this what Wonder Woman really, is this really what she wants to do? She finally comes back. She just saved the multiverse. Now she's come back to save it from a looming threat. But she wants to return the sword to some guy she slept with on numerous occasions over the first 10 issues. Is this what a responsible heroine does? Like, this is ridiculous to me. And I just find the whole thing absolutely, look, the art's great. I didn't mind the art, but other things. Steve Trevor here is attacked by this Wonder Woman clone. I don't really know why. So this thing's, I don't know. I don't understand what's going on. I'm not really sure what this big deal is. Dr. Psycho of all things is now ends up, I don't know, I'm not sure what's going on there. Dr. Psycho is involved in some sort of storyline going forward here. He's got some sort of artifact, and so he's retrieved some artifact. Not really sure what the artifact does. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman goes on a plane with Deadman to go to the resting place of Siegfried to, I guess, return the sword. Why don't you just why don't you fly there? Why you go on a jet? Again, do the writers not know this is Wonder Woman? Did she forget how to fly? She's already got her powers back. Why is she on a jet? Although I will give compliments. She's wearing glasses. It's almost like, does Wonder Woman have a secret identity now? Why is she wearing glasses? Is she in disguise? So she has a secret identity? She doesn't have a secret identity, I know, but I like the art, I like the callback, but I just find it's interesting artistic choices, but it's not served by a good story in my mind, or at least this isn't consistent with what my expectations were. we'll see where it goes. But Wonder Woman, it ends with Wonder Woman looking out the plane, and she's being followed by a bunch of clones of herself, and um, I don't know. I guess silly me. I thought Wonder Woman was going to care about saving the multiverse from a looming threat, but no, she's more concerned about returning a sword to a dead lover. This just blows me away, and this is boring as hell. And meanwhile, she's angsting over Steve Trevor. So I'm very frustrated, and I'll leave it at that. What do you think, Jace?
I didn't dislike it as much as you. I will say, yeah, the whole she can't talk to Steve Trevor thing, I was just like, wait, what? And, I'll push back a little bit on you. She does give a reason why she wants to take the sword back. She feels like she's holding on to more than just the sword. So in my mind, and, the writers don't come right out and say it, and maybe I'm jumping to the wrong conclusion here, but it feels like there's a little bit of guilt there. And I don't know that she should necessarily have guilt because she had this relationship when she thought she was dead.
He gave her the sword. He gave it to her.
Right, but the way I'm reading it is that if she keeps the sword, then she can't have a relationship with Steve Trevor because it's a symbol of the relationship and the feeling she had for Siegfried. Right. He's been dead for thousands of years, so she needs to.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. I never thought of it.
Lay the sword to rest. So at that point, she then can talk to Steve Trevor, because right now she can't talk to him because she feels guilty that she, went behind his back, even though they're not technically together. They have no obligation to be faithful to each other, and she was dead, and if he dated, she couldn't. The whole friend Ross Rachel thing, we were on a break, I thought you were dead. So exactly. I get that, and I don't know if that's the reason or not, but
she didn't seem to care about Steve Trevor when she was banging Siegfried for 10 issues. I'll tell you that.
Exactly, but now it's a symbol of the guilt. And then as far as her being on the plane, first thing I thought was, why are they flying? But she does say, and Deadman asks her, why are we taking a plane? Well, sometimes I need to sit with my thoughts. A 9-hour flight will allow me to do just that. I hate flying, not because I'm scared the plane's going to crash. Whatever. The reason I don't like to fly is because I'm not rich and I can't afford to sit in first class where you actually have some room. The reason I don't like to fly is it's super uncomfortable and cramped. And that's just it. You're stuck there. So if I was Wonder Woman and I could get somewhere quicker, I would get there quicker. I don't understand this at all. And she's like, yeah, sometimes it's comfortable just letting someone else take control for a moment. I don't know. This characterization of Wonder Woman, that's not the Wonder Woman that I know. She's much more take charge than this. But again, I'm going to give them a little bit of leeway. Feels like they're finally trying to get their run going. So despite those couple of things, not sure what bothers me more is this idea of Deadman taking over a corpse. Like the whole thing with Deadman and the angst that he feels is because he doesn't have a body, right? Like he's always a ghost and whatever. And he could go inside a living person for a small amount of time, but obviously he doesn't want to take over their life because in his mind that's murder. And so he's taken over a body and he's like, give it a week until it starts to decompose or whatever. He's even got the cadaver scars. Like this doesn't make sense to me, especially the shirt that he's wearing with a V-neck that shows the cadaver scar. He gets on the plane wearing that same shirt. You're telling me that people don't know what the scar is on his chest?
Yeah, I know.
They take one look at him. TSA, when he went through security, would take one look at him and go, what in the hell? Why is this dead body trying to get on the plane? So yeah, I'm not sure what they're trying to do with Deadman here. I understand that for whatever reason, like you said, they want to establish this rapport between Deadman and Wonder Woman, but this isn't the way to do it. Having him inhabiting a dead body, this is not the way to do it. But I am intrigued. I'm intrigued by this idea that there's these simulacra of Wonder Woman, these different versions. They look slightly different. The one that that attacked Steve Trevor, he shot it. It sort of shattered like glass. So what exactly is going on there? Yeah, I'm curious. Can this go somewhere? I like the idea that there's multiple threads. We got something going on with Dr. Psycho here that we're wondering about as well. So I'm going to give him a little bit of runway here to see. What I don't want to see is what happened with the first storyline where it just was interminable and went on way too long. Because let's get some 3, 4, 5 issue arcs going. Let's figure out what's going on with these clones. And that's done, 4 or 5 issues. Then let's do the Dr. Psycho story. That's 4 or 5 issues. Let's find out what this looming threat was. That's 4 or 5 issues. I like the idea of having subplots because that feels very old school to me. That's how comics were when I first started reading them. Everything wasn't, written for the trade. Um, but yeah, you can't drag them on too long because that's where it sort of loses the plot for me. As far as the art goes, I'd much rather have Travis Moore. The Marcio Takara art was a little messy in my mind. It wasn't awful, but it was a little inconsistent. There are times where it worked for me better than others. A lot of times it was the action panels that I felt were kind of messy. And I feel like I've seen better art from Takara at times. But the talking head scenes, that's where his art seemed to shine. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just a little bit of up and down. As far as the backup story, it's written by Vita Ayala. What Lies Beneath Part 1. Skylar Partridge does the art. Romulo Fajardo Jr. is on colors and Pat Broso on letters. Fantastic art, first of all. Beautiful colors. Like this art is amazing. Like Skylar Partridge is an artist that you like take note of that name because you're going to see her art showing up in a lot of places. And I can see her really taking that sort of Amanda Connor trajectory where people be a big fan of her. Emmanuel Lupacchino, maybe, in kind of in that vein. So I did enjoy the story. It's basically the story of how the Bana Migdal tribe of Amazons gets new recruits, gets new blood, and so I appreciated that context. I thought the scripting and the pacing from Vita Ayala was done very, very well, and I feel like a lot of the reasons we're getting so many different stories of different aspects of the Amazons, it's right there. There's a little kind of dialogue box right above the title. It's a road to the trial of the Amazons, which we know is a big event that's coming next year. So we're getting a chance in all these various Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman related titles to see all these different aspects of the Amazon because they're all going to come together in this big event, whatever it is. So yeah, I thought it worked really, really well. And I
Yeah.
especially loved the Skylar Partridge art, and I especially loved the way the way Skylar Partridge draws Artemis,
Yeah.
like with her classic costume, and she looks formidable and she looks beautiful, and yeah, I thought it was fantastic. So,
Yeah.
any thoughts on the backup, Rocky?
The backup is fantastic. The backup made the issue. I straight up I've got really I hate to be so hard. I'm sorry, but I just got no interest in what the main story in Wonder Woman. Diana is it's clearly not going anywhere important. It just isn't. I mean, it's not Wonder Woman clearly is not focused. She's not looking what she's not doing her job. And and again, when my criticism just involves me playing script doctor, I realize that's me being unfair. I shouldn't. I'm not the writer, so it's kind of I realize I'm kind of being a jerk playing script doctor, and that's kind of what my criticism was of Wonder Woman this week. I'm sorry, I apologize for that, but it's just like when something is so obvious that she's supposed to be doing, and it's been teased and told, and she's finally back, and she's not dealing with the looming threat. But okay, I won't beat that dead horse anymore. The backup, I love the backup because you said it. We're starting to see how different Amazons recruit and get and populate themselves because let's face it, when you have no man, how on earth do you repopulate? Well, we know on Themyscira, we know from the from Nubia and the Amazon story, they got the Well of Souls. And now here with the Bana Migdal tribe, we know that they sort of recruit women from all over the world with different backgrounds, and they run them through a gambit or a test, and so that's very interesting. And I'm sure that hopefully in the pages of Wonder Girl, we'll get some idea what the Brazilian tribe of Amazons, what their background is more than what we've already gotten. So I like this, and the idea of this is leading to trial of the Amazons. Does that mean just the Bana Migdal tribe? Does that mean all of them? Presumably, it means all the 3 tribes of Amazons. It's really good. I agree with you 100%. Skylar Partridge is absolutely an artist to watch. Fantastic. And Romulo Fajardo Jr., my favorite colorist, does an absolutely bang-up job. This is excellent. I'm really intrigued here. Between Nubia and the Amazons and this backup, that's the best. That heightens my interest in Wonder Woman lore more so than anything, and I continue to be disappointed with the story in the main Wonder Woman title, the main story. But this backup was good.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Okay, so up next is Batman Urban Legends number 9. Now, unfortunately, they didn't put a a credits page like I normally do in here, so I'm just going to give the credits to the various stories as we talk about them. The first one is a Fear State tie-in disinformation campaign. This is part 2 of 2, and this is the Batwoman Red Alice story that started last issue with Elisa Wong. She's the writer. Vasco Gregev or Georgiev, I think it's Gregev, is the way you pronounce it. It's Russian. He's the artist. Rain Barreto handles the colors, and Becca Carey on letters. Um, and so interesting. Like I hear that name Alyssa Wong, and I keep thinking back to the Batman the Imposter because it's Detective Wong in there, and I keep like, wait, one's a real person and one is fiction. But anyway, I really enjoyed this, and I think that even though that this is part 2 of a story that is a complete story, there's a lot here. It gives Kate Kane's sister, who was Red Alice, a chance to sort of reconcile her different personas. It's almost like she has split personality with uh, the Beth side of her, the Beth Kane side of her, as opposed to the Red Alice side of her. And in here, we see her sort of, and again, it's kind of tropey and it's not the most original idea, but we see her sort of in her own mind come face to face with herself, her Red Alice persona and her Beth persona, and kind of merge them together. And maybe she'll be, more stable and can even possibly be an ally for Batwoman going forward. So I never understand why Batwoman titles don't last. Because I think she's a fantastic character and really interesting to me. Um, I thought when Tynion was doing it, it was good. I thought when Marguerite Bennett was doing it, it was good. When J.H. Williams was doing it, it was good. Now he left the book because DC wouldn't let him marry off Kate Kane and the Question, Renee Montoya. So I could see why he left. But yeah, Tynion wrote Batwoman in the pages of Detective Comics, and that was well done as well. I just think she's a good character, and I'd much rather have a Batwoman title than Red Hood. Not that I dislike Jason Todd at all, but I just think that she deserves her own title. I think she's interesting enough, and it's separate enough and different enough. And if Red Alice her sister's managed to kind of come to a new status quo, she could be a great supporting character for the book. So, but anyway, that's just me playing editor. As far as this story itself goes, it ties into Fear State, and what it does actually, it's pretty important. And I have a feeling a lot of people that are reading Fear State may miss this. But we see Kate Kane, or Batwoman, and her sister Beth going up against some magistrate that are being manipulated by the Anti-Oracle into thinking that the Anti-Oracle is Simon Saint, and she's giving orders to the magistrate to take out Batwoman and Red Alice. But the other thing that we learn in here is that it's the Seer. What we learn is the Anti-Oracle and the Seer are the same character. This is the first time we have like concrete proof in the story that these two characters are the same person. Because like Rocky was saying earlier, there's so much convoluted different plot threads and characters and whatnot, and all these different heroes and new villains that James Tynion has introduced in his Batman run, that it can be very confusing. And again, going back to his newsletters and how he talks about choosing to introduce all these new characters and the reasons behind it and all that. I'm not going to get into them here, but they're fascinating, and I find it very enlightening. So interesting here, and I'm glad that they're the same character, because in my mind I can just put them in the same box now, and it makes sense, and I don't have to try to keep track of one more character. So I feel like that was sort of the most important aspect of the story, that we find out Anti-Oracle and Seer are the same characters. Second most important would be Beth reconciling her Red Alice half. And as far as the art and the colors and the visuals of the story, I thought it was fantastic. Really, really well done. Enjoyed this story. I would love for there to be a Batwoman title, and I think I loved Alyssa Wong's take on the sisters here, the Kane sisters. And I would be happy to read a Batwoman title by her with the same art team too. I thought it was really, 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 really good, despite the fact that it's a Future State tie-in. And other than that, in terms of Future State, other than that reveal that Anti-Oracle and Seer are one and the same, it doesn't really advance or do much for the Future State storyline, honestly. So I don't know. What did you think, Rocky?
This is one of those moments where I'm glad I've got there's two of us because I kind of skim read this. It never really resonated with me. I'm not a Batwoman fan, and I'll be honest, I'm less of a Batwoman fan precisely because the show is so terrible. And I hate to say it, but it's true. This character, I mean, Red Alice is everywhere. She's just everywhere. I mean, give us a new character already. Every time I see Batwoman, it seems to be the same villain. I don't know. It just, I have no interest in this character. This story is just
Is
not
she
for me.
is Red Alice a character on? I've never seen the show, so is
Well,
Red
pretty
Alice a
much, it
character?
looks exactly like the one on TV, and it's just so boring
Oh,
after a
gotcha.
while. The other one, and maybe this is, maybe this is just me being unfair, and look, but I just this is just so this feels kind of derivative to me. Like it just seems like it's always women villains, women this, and it's just like I don't know. She needs more of a she's more of a variety of rogues gallery, and again, I hate to say it, but this it's tropey insofar as I do think women characters need more male villains. But maybe that's unfair of me. Maybe because when I think, well, maybe Batman has mostly male villains, so who am I to criticize Batwoman for having too many female villains, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe I'm just being a negative Nelly here, but I did not know. That's the last. I'm just reading some dialogue here. Uh, I never picked up that this was Seer, that was also Seer. So thank you for that.
Yeah, if you go,
I would
yeah,
not
if
have
you
made that. I didn't. I'm reading it right now. So, but
yeah, if you go to the page where Red Alice is carving the stuff into the door, the circle and like the sun thing, and she calls herself the Anti-Oracle, the Seer. So that's where it's. And then
oh
with that context, as you read the rest of the issue, it's clear because then
wow
they they refer to her sometimes as Anti-Oracle and sometimes they refer to her as Seer. So yeah,
wow yeah that actually knowing that actually makes me dislike the story even more, and not only that not it's not even maybe it's not the story's fault, but that gets me angry at editorial all the more. I mean that just frustrates me. It just frustrates me. It's something that I don't know. It just does. But
it's important and it should be more clear.
well, I think it should be more clear, and it should have been a better build up. And it just seems a little bit. I don't know. It just seems a little bit. I mean, I don't think they've done an adequate enough job building up who this seer is supposed to be, who this anti-oracle is. I think it's just been because it's dragged on a little bit too much. This fear state, I've been enjoying it for the most part, but it does feel that they just literally they just want to drag it out an extra 2 or 3 issues. Just and I've been so patient for so long, and it's still not over. But at least this story is over here. But again, the whole the seer is still around, or this anti-oracle is still around, and it's just a little frustrating. But I admit maybe maybe it's not a character that's for me anymore because it whatever. I'll just shut up now.
All right. So up next we have I don't know, for lack of a better way to put it, we have a story about the
Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
yeah, Tweedledee and Tweedledum story in Down the Rabbit Hole, and it's basically a story about the dysfunction of the sort of healthcare system in the United States. For writer Sam Johns, Carl Mostert does the art, David Barron on colors, Tom Napolitano on colors, and basically, Dumb is trying to take care of Tweedledee. And when I say take care of him, I mean like literally take care of him. They have a bunch of cash stashed away from their last job. They don't want for money, but there's something wrong with D, and he's trying to get him medical attention. Despite having all this money, he can't. Like first he goes to the pharmacy. I just want medicine. The pharmacy's like, what kind of medicine? Like you need to take him. You need insurance. Blah blah blah. Tries to get insurance. Insurance is like, well, you could only sign up for insurance during this window and that window and blah blah blah. And he's like, man, I just need somebody to help out my cousin who is is having medical issues. So and it's interesting. It's topical, and it's all in and obviously I'm saying that a little tongue in cheek that it's a sort of a commentary on the dysfunction of the medical or healthcare industry in the U.S. But I mean, there's some truth to that. So I mean, it's a Tweedledee and a Tweedledum story, and the White Rabbit shows up at the beginning, or March Hare. What do they call her? March. I mean, March Harriet is her
Yeah.
name, and she was in. David Finch did that cover that was
Yeah.
really really popular.
That,
But anyway, um, I mean, I wouldn't think that I would ever be interested in a story about Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and I wouldn't necessarily think, if you told me, okay, we're going to put a story of Tweedledee and Tweedledum into Batman Urban Legends, that this is what it would be about. But I'll give credit to Sam Johns, the writer. I think they do a good job of making this sort of compelling, and you do sort of empathize with what Tweedledum is going through here. I mean, guy just wants to help out his cousin, and he can't get the help he needs. He's getting the runaround. So yeah, it's sad in a realistic way. You know, this could easily be somebody in the United States just trying to get healthcare and trying to navigate this broken system. So interesting editorial choice to put in here, and technically a well done comic. Thought Carl Mostart does a great job with line work. David Barron is been working in the industry for I think 30 years now. So yeah, his color work is fantastic. So all in all, pretty solid story. What do you think, Rocky?
yeah, I'm actually, this story shocks me. Of all, like, I would never, a Tweedledee and Tweedledum story, and to have the central piece of the narrative being, the healthcare system and trying to get treatment for his cousin. It just, uh, I look, I'm just gonna be blunt. The art was really good. I just wasn't really interested in it, to be honest with you. I mean, I feel sorry for 'em. These are both intellectually challenged individuals. I feel sorry for them, I guess. I mean, I'm Canadian, I guess. We have, maybe our healthcare system's a little different here, despite what half of Americans seem to think they know about Canadian healthcare system. We actually have a pretty good one, and it's I don't know, is it that bad in the U.S. that if you're if you're that
Pretty
overweight and you
bad.
got a twin brother that your twin cousin, I didn't care about this. I just didn't care about the storyline, and then it just seems forced. I mean, is it really that difficult? They're loaded with cash and they can't get treatment. Really? I almost don't even believe it, to be honest. And I just and I don't know, of all the resources they would have, I would have thought that they'd been. Anyways, I'm being. Uh, I just don't really quite get it. It wasn't funny. It wasn't entertaining. Uh, I guess the point was to make me feel sorry for these. I guess, but I got no interest in these two. These two are bumbling idiots, and I like them. I frankly I preferred the way, I can't believe I'm saying this, I prefer how Tom King wrote them in his run. And that's saying something. And I wasn't a big fan of Batman's Tom King run, but at least Tweedledee and Tweedledum were dumb. And here I didn't quite get this. The art's fantastic. I don't really understand where, I feel bad that I don't want D to die. But I'm going to make a prediction here. I think it's just going to end up with Batman finding them, and then Bruce Wayne's going to throw a bunch of money at him and give him the best healthcare treatment he can in the next chapter. I think that's how this is going to end. So kind of, it's just going to be another way to prop up how cool Batman is. So anyways, I'm sorry.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're lucky you're in Canada and you've never had to deal with the healthcare system in the U.S. because it really is that bad. And
Okay.
it isn't. If Tweedledum was intelligent and had that money, then yeah, he could find a way to navigate it. It's the fact that he isn't intelligent and doesn't understand the complexities of the system that makes the fact that he has money useless. Because usually it goes the other way. Usually a person is smart enough to figure out or to follow the directions that you're given, and you just don't have the money to pay for it. But
Yeah.
even if you have money, the system is so broken. Yeah, like when he calls the insurance and they say, "Oh yeah, you can only sign up for insurance." Everybody is mandated to have insurance in this country, health insurance, but you can only sign up and get it at certain times of the year. Which
Really?
again, yeah, it's
Yeah.
really, really, really bad.
But
So
I don't know, for me, like, I guess as a reader, like, maybe it is because I'm Canadian. I just didn't get into this story at all. I mean,
well, yeah, I mean,
whatever.
is even as an American who's knows how broken the system is this really what I want to read about in my comics? So yeah, I mean, I did feel sorry for them. It's again a technically well put together comic. It's doing what I think it's meant to do. The story is doing what it's meant to do. It's eliciting emotion and empathy. But again, is this like who? Okay, I'm gonna write a story about the Tweedledee and Tweedledum that is a commentary on the healthcare system in the U.S. Wait, what? Who thought this was a good idea? So, but regardless, I'll give them props for putting. Technically, it's a well put together comic story.
Yeah, it is. It is. Again, pacing and everything, struck dialogue. It was all good. It was all good. It was just a subject matter. Just never really
Yeah,
caught my fancy.
yeah, yeah. Fair enough. All right, up next is an Azrael story, Azrael, Dark Knight of the Soul, Part 2, from writer Dan Waters. Nicola Zameta on art, Ivan Placencia on colors, Ariana Mayer on letters. I don't have much to say about this one. I didn't really care for the art, didn't care for the art that much in part one, and it's leaning into the whole idea of Azrael is frankly a religious nutbag, which is the least interesting aspect of him in my mind. Um, and I get why you want to do that and get back to his roots, but I love Azrael visually, and I kind of wish that his origin wasn't so tied into religiosity and faith and all that kind of stuff, because writers, I feel like when they don't know what to do with Azrael, they just revert back to that, and I don't want to say it feels lazy, but it's not interesting to me. And maybe that's because I had religion forced down my throat, while I was growing up,
Yeah.
that I have an aversion to it. Um, and so it's not what I want to read about. So
I
yeah,
agree.
yeah,
I figure they should have Azrael go and rescue Tweedledee and Tweedledum. I mean, if he wants to
there you
care
go.
for people, and why doesn't he convert Tweedledee and Tweedledum to religion? Maybe he can get him free healthcare at the church he's at. Like, I mean, I was not into this story either. He just seems like a fanatic and just spouting nonsense. I mean, he was infinitely more interesting when he was in space with Justice League Odyssey than he
Yep.
is. I'd rather have him stay in space and have some space adventures and go back to Gotham and become this religious fanatic who seems to be, I don't know. I mean, I agree with Batman in the opening chapter of this. I mean, if I was Batman, I'd be concerned about this lunatic too. I mean, I don't know. He's not doing religion any favors when he's scripted like this, but that's just me. I'm sorry I'm being negative. I did not. This is the worst issue of Batman Urban Legends, by the way, since issue 1. I've been enjoying this, but this issue 10 is just, there isn't a single story that resonated with me. Sorry, so
Well, we
I'm just
well we
giving you a
did
heads
like
up.
we both liked the last story, the first part, when Outsiders the Fearful, part 1. This is
That's
the
right.
finale.
But
So Brandon Thomas is the writer, Cian Tormey on
yeah,
pencils, Val Fernandez on inks, Alejandro
sure.
Sanchez on colors, Steve Wand on letters. And
Yeah,
I did comment when we read the first part that I didn't see how this would only be worthy of only 2 issues, because it was such a fantastic start.
yeah,
And although it does come to a satisfying conclusion, we get this double page spread with a bunch of dialogue boxes that basically gives us the conclusion of the story that should have played out over another issue or 2, because there just wasn't enough room. And
yeah,
I don't know if it was because schedules didn't line up for Brandon Thomas or with Batman Urban Legends, but yeah, it's a little disappointing that I feel like this story had more legs, and I would have liked
yeah.
another chapter or 2, because it would have been interesting. Still a satisfying conclusion. We got all the answers, but it's definitely a situation where we're told, not shown,
Yeah.
what actually happens. And then the one thing I wasn't clear on, so if you didn't read the first part or hear a review on the first part, far in the future, this person, the Fearful, he's infected with 2 different strains of the Scarecrow's fear toxin, and it kind of mutates in his body and it literally oozes out through his pores. And because of that, it's become this post-apocalyptic world, and he rules all, and everybody's scared and whatnot. So they send back a disembodied version of Black Lightning, Jefferson Pierce, who can only be in his lightning form, and he's tied to the Soul Taker sword. So they send the sword back through time with this magical demon arm that Duke Thomas has. Yeah, that's not ever really explained, but anyway, how he got that arm. But sent back through time, meets up with the Outsiders in the past, and they try to nip this thing in the bud before it starts, and they're ultimately successful, even though we see the beginnings of that. And then, like I said, that double page spread gives us basically what goes down after that. And meanwhile, far in the future, where Duke Thomas has been captured and is being held hostage by the Fearful, he's got him hanging upside down, and he's telling the Fearful, Jonah is his name. He says, "Don't worry, it's all going to be fixed, and we're going to be here, and time's just going to change out from under us." But time does change, and they're successful in the past, but they still live in this post-apocalyptic hellhole.
Yeah.
That's what I didn't understand. I'm like, wait, why didn't, like, so it's no longer the Fearful that rules the future, but the future still sucks? I mean, that was terrible. I sort of expected, this like wave to come along, like a crisis wave to come along and go across the page, and then it would be like more of like a bright utopia, maybe like the Gotham City that we saw, even though it was an illusion, the Gotham City that we saw in Scott Snyder's Justice League run, if you remember that, when it was the World Forger or whatever that was fooling them into thinking it was a brighter Gotham. Man, what a jip for the Outsiders, for future Duke Thomas. He succeeded in his mission. They went and nipped this Fearful person in the bud and stopped him from becoming this evil despot that ruined the world. And he no longer has the demon arm, but he still lives in a post-apocalyptic hellhole. Man, that kind of sucks. What a letdown. So I just thought it was interesting. Again, I would love to get more stories of either this future Outsiders tale from Brandon Thomas to find out, okay, why does it still suck in the future? Or even more of this idea of the Outsiders in the present day that he introduced to us, where one of the Outsider members is a rotating person, right? So we have the Jefferson Pierce of nowadays, we have Katana, we have Signal, Duke Thomas, we have Metamorpho, but that fifth person rotates. Like whoever needs the help of the other four becomes a temporary member of the Outsiders. They take on their mission and then, move on. Way to give some lesser used heroes of the DCU a chance to get the spotlight, basically. So yeah, and the art was absolutely fantastic. I give a lot of credit to Ciaran Tormey for giving us really dynamic, fantastic art, a lot of detail, and especially did a good job in that 2-page spread that I was talking about, where we basically get the second or the third and fourth parts of the story sort of all played out there over that double-page spread. So yeah, I mean, it's still fantastic. If I'm nitpicking it all, it's only because it's so good that I wish it could have had more real estate.
Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of pushback. I love Brandon Thomas, but this was just a miss for me, and it was and maybe in fairness to him, I mean, it's odd. I have the same criticism as you, but you loved it, and I didn't, because this I get the strong sense, and it's laid out in this 2-page spread. I mean, we are told. I mean, this could have what's said in this 2-page spread could take 2 or 3 issues, and I know we know how Brandon Thomas how well he can craft a story when he's given the real estate to do so, and he's got the artists here that could aid with that. But this just feels really, really rushed. I was a little confused, even with the 2-page spread, truncated information. The art is fantastic. I love the look of that arm. Is just fantastic. I mean, I keep thinking that there's parts of the story that I feel like I've missed something, even though everything has been wrapped up. The ending is atrocious, absolutely atrocious. I mean, I don't understand that. Now the future, I don't know. The future doesn't change. When you change the past, I mean, I don't know. Maybe the rules of time travel are different. I guess you can, Tony Stark can tell me, no, it's not like Back to the Future. I don't know. Does anybody know? Anyways, the whole thing was just very messy to me. And it's really unfortunate, but the closer we get to resolving all these future state storylines, the more it's quite obvious that I think DC has realized that it didn't hit. It hasn't gone well. And boy, oh boy, it really, I hate to say it, but it seems to me that the editors never did. Nobody bothered to call each other and say, by the way, how are you resolving your storyline? By the way, how are you resolving storyline? I mean, I wonder how many writers know that the Seer is anti-Oracle. I mean, I'm being kind of a sarcastic bastard right now, but I kind of wonder this a little bit here, because I'm a little bit frustrated because I've been given cut in DC. I have been enjoying myself. Like I'm not gonna completely flip flop here, But I am a little disappointed with how these things are sort of wrapping up. For those of us that really invested in the story to have these things, and I know Brandon Thomas he's got a good story here, but like you said, when he's got to just bombard us with the ending by telling us, it's just really unfortunate, and it just didn't work for me. So this is a miss, and as an overall, this to be in this issue, there isn't a single story in this issue that frankly I like. That was a huge disappointment. I mean, I'm a completionist for Batman Urban Legends, so I'm going to be picking up. Uh, I'll pick up the Francavilla cover here of Batwoman because I got a huge Francavilla collection. But beyond that, the stories are a miss for me.
Yeah, I don't hold Brandon Thomas. It's got to be either an editorial issue. Brandon didn't have room in his schedule, or Urban Legends only had room for a 2-part story. I don't hold him at fault for this, but yeah, I mean, I'm going to give him credit because it was a good concept, and maybe I'm giving him props on the concept more than the execution, because yeah, there are a lot more questions than answers when it comes to this story. So anyway, that does it for this week. DC Comics, everybody. There are a couple of other books that are hitting your shelves that I'll mention. Harley Quinn the animated series, the Eat Bang Kill Tour #3 is out. Batman and Scooby Doo Mysteries #8. Also, Static Season 1 #4, which I talked about on the last episode, but only one of the covers came out. And I think it was cover B actually that came out last week, and this week cover A comes out. So there's a few other books that you might want to be on the lookout for, and there's also some collections as well. So let me let you know what those are that are going to be out this week from DC, so you can look for them on your local shop. So we've got Batman Superman Volume 2, World's Deadliest trade paperback, which is all about um, the Auteur IO, that great story that Rocky and I both loved with the Yvonne Reese art. And we've got Superman, the One Who Fell trade paperback. That's the first collection of Philip Kennedy Johnson's Superman run. Also, the Man Bat Black. I don't know. No, I guess it wasn't Black Label because he died in continuity, and then they brought him back with Task Force Z. So the Man Bat 3-issue series that gets a collection as well. And then Justice League Dark, the New 52 Omnibus is out. That's a hardcover. I think it's well over 100 pages, and collects the whole run of Justice League Dark, which is some of the earliest Mikel Janin art over at DC. So if you're a fan of him, you might want to be on the lookout for that. So
And a lot of James Tynion, he wrote a lot of Justice League Dark as well.
yeah, exactly. So, well, like I said, that's going to do it, everybody. Thanks for joining us as always. Don't forget, if you're just listening to us on the podcast audio version, head over to YouTube. Make sure you do a search for Comic Boom. That's Comic Space Boom with an exclamation point, and subscribe to Rocky's channel. Ring that notification bell so you know when new episodes are coming out. And be sure to give this episode a like. Conversely, if you're checking us out on YouTube, be sure you head over to your smart device, your either your podcast app or whatever podcast platform that you use, and do a search for the Comic Source on there, and give us a subscription so you can be sure to listen to all our other content. We do the spoiler-free New Comic Book Wednesdays, and a lot of creator-owned spotlights and creator interviews and all that kind of good stuff. So really appreciate you guys joining us as always. And hey, Rocky, great to have you back. Missed you last week, buddy.
You bet. Thanks. Well, I'll catch you guys later.